Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Stoughton School Committee. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Dr. Rizzi. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We'll start with a very special presentation. Stoughton Public Library Teen Summer Reading Video Awards. And I would like to turn the floor over to Miss Pat Basler.
Thank you for putting us on your schedule tonight. It looks like you're going to have a busy evening, so we really appreciate it. These young ladies here are part of the Library Teen Advisory Board, and this year they, along with the help of the young adult librarian Dipti Mehta and the staff at the Comcast at SMAC, our local cable station, put together a PSA, a 2 or 3 minute video as a professional commercial to promote the summer reading program. And they submitted it to a nationwide organization, and they won the video contest for the state of Massachusetts. So hopefully, for the viewing public, you'll be able to see that video clip a little bit later in this program. I'm hoping to get them on the local cable station as well pretty soon so that we can show it there. It is on, oh great, so it's a YouTube clip and it's also on the local cable station. So I'm going to have the young ladies introduce themselves, say what grade they're in, and maybe talk a little bit about making the video. I do want to give a special thanks to Jeff Pickett and Mike Hammond, who work at the SMAC station. They did a great job at helping these young ladies figure out what to write for the script and how to get their idea across. It really was a great experience. This is a program that we have available to everybody in town, so please take advantage of our local cable station.
Hi, my name is Disha, and I am a junior at Stoughton High School.
Hi, my name is Ngozi Kiki, and I'm in the middle school, and I'm in 8th grade, and I'm in TAB.
Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm also in TAB.
TAB is a teen advisory board run by Dipti Mehta. She is our advisor. We meet every other Monday of the week, and we talk about how we can promote the library, how we can bring more students into the library, and we discuss all the fun things we can do at the library. We have movie nights every Thursday, and we did this great video challenge for the summer. And it was a great opportunity for us because we did it last year, but we didn't get to submit it because we were late, and we got to it this year, and we're very proud of it.
And the best part is there was a financial prize, and the library got $125, and they each got a little bit, so it was really great.
Our video person is going to try to show the video on the screen here, and also
It won't be
it won't work here,
but it may go out over
so we'll just
airwaves.
wait. He's going to try to send it, make it part of the record. So let's give him a few minutes.
It is also possible for those people who have devices or have devices at home and don't want to.
I can't wait to get out of school for the summer, but I also don't want to be bored at home all day.
Be careful. You don't want to mix the wrong chemicals and spark a reaction.
Guys, are you okay?
Yeah.
You don't have to be bored during the summer. Didn't you know at your local library they host a teen summer reading program?
Really?
What's a teen summer reading?
I'm sure you all love to read, and some of you have to read anyways for school. So add to the equation of recording your reading
With fun incentives like backpacks, headphones, and lanyards.
And don't forget about the fun activities you get to participate in. Robotics, tie-dye t-shirts, and many more.
Wow, that sounds like fun. Where do I sign up?
At your library!
Oh! I hope you have a happy, healthy summer reading, and don't forget to create a spark with
science, technology,
Engineering.
And math.
at your local library.
Okay, we're back.
Wow, that was a very nice video. I watched it from my office. Now we have, on behalf of the school committee and the superintendent's office, I'm really proud to make a special presentation to the students. I'll call your name. Please come and get your certificate. Monica Pabla. Nyuzi Okiki.
Very good.
And Diksha Pokaral. Congratulations. And we got one more. Please stay. There may be some comments from the school committee members. We got one more for Asta Pokaral. So anybody would like to comment?
I'd like to comment. First of all, I want to thank your parents, because without your parents, guess what? You wouldn't be here. Okay, and I'm sure this is an honor and a pleasure for them, and I'm sure that this is what you call giving back to your parents, and obviously giving back to society as well. So I want to thank you all very, very much, and certainly, I'm sorry, Pat Basler. Pat Basler, I apologize, Pat, because I know you. And, and I want to thank Pat Basler, obviously, for helping, and of course, Jeff for doing what he does, and he's very, very good at what he does. He's probably the most well-known person in Stoughton because of what he does. And thank you all very, very much for this. I appreciate that.
Doctor?
Ladies,
Brown.
thank you. Ladies, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to get back to the community and try to encourage other students, especially your generation, to come out and read. I'm just glad to be surrounded by all these kids. I'm just like real happy right now. That's great. I feel like I'm at home. Thank you all, and keep up the good work, please.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is student high school representatives. Do we have any?
They're actually
They
both,
graduated.
I think they're both in band tonight.
Oh, band.
Marching band has a pre-show for next year right now.
Special education meeting.
Okay.
Not this evening then.
Next item is public comments. I invite Sean Carr. Okay. The topic is high school lacrosse, and we try to limit these presentations to up to 3 minutes.
I can certainly do that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name is Sean Carr. I'm at 1212 West Street. I was pleased to be the assistant coach of our youngest players, the U9 boys, and just want to take a couple of minutes, tell you about a problem and then potential solution. The problem is youth participation in sports is down about 4%, 2008 to 2012, and that certainly doesn't help with childhood obesity and general inactivity of our children. This is out of a recent article on the day before the Super Bowl in 2014, so it was February 2nd or 4th, out of the Wall Street Journal, a significant study they did into youth sports participation. But there are some bright spots, and number one is lacrosse, which is up 158%. And as you'll see here today, everyone here representing our Stoughton lacrosse. So Dean will talk a bit more about how this game has grown in our town, and indeed this game is growing all over the world. There are almost 700,000 participants in the U.S., about 300,000 of them are high school players, and that keeps growing and growing and growing every year. It exceeds growth rates of all sports. It is the most highly subscribed, new subscribed sport at the high school level by exceeds water polo is number 2, lacrosse is number 1 by about 30%, and this is according to the National High School Athletic Associations. It is also the highest growth rate in the NCAA, so it's growing at all levels, at the youth level, at the high school level, at the NCAA level. 40 new teams at the NCAA started, most notably Michigan in 2012. Started a men's program and a women's program. So the future is very much in lacrosse. It's a great game. A lot of crossover athletes can play this sport, from football to soccer to basketball, hockey. If you played any of those sports, you really get it. It's very easy conceptually to get this game. It's a lot of fun, and it's known as the fastest game on 2 feet, and we would really like your support to be able to have this as a high school sport in Stoughton next year. That's it. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Fred Shane.
That's great. All right, so I really don't come with a pre-prepared speech other than just 2 or 3 minutes of your time. First off, my son over there plays lacrosse for the U13 team, as well as I'm a coach. I've played lacrosse or been involved with lacrosse for 31 years, and it's been a huge part of my life. In fact, I even still have my high school lacrosse jersey, which I was going to bring tonight, but I thought that'd be a little strange, so I said forget it. But it's a unique sport, and I'm telling you from a lacrosse player's perspective why it's unique, because it promotes everything you want in sports: teamwork, respect, self-confidence, discipline, athleticism, also, team spirit, and most importantly, sportsmanship. I've coached these boys, and the U13 team exemplified sportsmanship because we won 2 games the whole season, 3 if you count the elite game that we played, and they won with grace, dignity, and represented the town of Stoughton like you'd probably want them to. So I'm very proud of those boys. The only other thing I want to say is this. My son has asked me a question, like many of these sons and daughters have asked their parents, and we don't have the answer right now, and we'd love to get one from you guys, or at least some sort of direction. They want to represent their community. They want to represent their school, being a Stoughton Knight lacrosse player at the high school. And we want to know, as parents and as players, and there are a lot more people that would probably be here tonight, I assume that they're busy, but they would be here, of what we need to do to get this accomplished. We are unified, we are organized, and we are willing to do what it takes to make this a reality. And I can assure you, by letting us do this will be the best thing for the Stoughton High School sports program, and you will have a long-term program that will represent everything you would want the high school to represent. And, I think a lot of parents feel that way. A lot of students are passionate about this. And all I ask is that you listen to the folks here tonight and give us an opportunity to answer your questions and let us move forward with this. And again, have this high school lacrosse program that could be representative of these great kids that are so deserving. There are kids in the U9 program all the way up to U15. And all they want to do is represent Stoughton High School as a lacrosse player. So I kindly ask you to, again, please listen to the folks here tonight and let us answer your questions and let us show to you that we are serious about this. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dean Russo, please.
I don't think I could have said it better than those 2 guys. One of them had facts and figures, and one of them had emotion. And basically, as you can see, these kids, they deserve a chance to have a high school varsity program. The kids that are going to be at Stoughton High School next year that would represent the lacrosse program, I can't say enough good things about them. I mean, I've never met a group of guys and I don't say this lightly, that, as Fred said, has exemplified teamwork, dedication. I mean, the coaches, they're in high school themselves, and their imagination and their creativity and the dedication that they were able to get out of a group of young men is off the charts. And one anecdotal evidence I can give you was we were playing a town that had field issues. Their field was covered in water and they couldn't make it, and they canceled our whole slate of games. 30 minutes later, I get a call from one of the coaches, and he said, "Can you please come down to the practice field and open up the facility? We want to practice anyways." The games got canceled and we wanted to practice. I almost fell off the chair. You know, most kids would be saying, "Oh, great, I can play Nintendo," or whatever it is. They wanted to go practice. I've seen them running the hill to discipline themselves. I've seen them running laps at the field to discipline themselves. They exemplify everything. When they made a mistake, they corrected it. When when they're asked to do something, they do it. They're an unbelievable group of guys. I cannot say enough good things about them. As Sean said, it's the fastest growing sport for a reason. I mean, it's just off the charts popular. When the kids try it, they don't leave. They want to come back, and they want to play more. From a youth perspective, we started the league. We were hoping to get 15 kids. We just threw it out there because a few of our sons were playing in another town, and we said, if we can get one team, we'll be happy. We ended up with 60 plus, and we were thrilled. It grew, I don't have the exact numbers, but it was like 30% in the second year. And everyone in our league keeps saying, yeah, once you get beyond that second year, it just explodes. It's not a sport that's like, it's growing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And Stoughton is lagging behind at the high school level. We are, I believe, the last program in the Hawk to not have a lacrosse program. I don't think that speaks well of Stoughton. I think, we're definitely not pitching a sport that's ahead of the curve. We're so far behind the curve now for lacrosse, it's not funny. And I think it's high time that they have a team. And believe me, it's not going to go anywhere. This sport is growing. It's not growing at all. It's not going backwards. And if there's any questions that you guys had about any concerns from the high school level,
well, what we'll do is in this period we usually don't have the discussion, but we put the topic first in the agenda. I hope you guys will stick around so that if the school committee has any questions, they'll be able to ask you.
Yep, we'll be
so
both
I'll
happy.
invite the next person. Next person is Mr. Tom Colburn.
Hi there.
Hello.
If there's anybody else for lacrosse to keep it on the same topic first, I'd be glad to.
Well, we'll go back to lacrosse anyways because that's the first topic of the agenda.
Sure.
Hello, everybody. I wrote a statement that I've prepared here and addressed it to the Stoughton School Committee. I, Tom Colburn, am a recent 3-term member and periodic chair and vice chair of the Stoughton School Committee. When I completed my 9 years on the school committee, many people were surprised that I didn't run for re-election. I explained that with a stellar administration, all contracts in place, and so much exciting progress being made by our teachers, and with a new high school on the horizon, all was going well and sustainable, and that's precisely when you do leave. I'm here tonight to express my deep concerns for Stoughton Public Schools' future. My concerns are not with the Superintendent, Dr. Rizzi, nor with Assistant Superintendent Jonathan Ford, the teachers, their union, or the staff, all of whom I have the utmost respect for. My concerns are with the dysfunction of the school committee and how that jeopardizes our school system. Our teachers are without a contract as their contracts expired around Labor Day 2013. After reorganization of the school committee in April, the new chair, Dr. Ural, appeared to go rogue by making an offer to the union which he had not previously calculated the full expense of with the rest of the school committee and with the business and with the administration and their business manager. I was the lead negotiator for our school committee on the previous 3 teacher union contracts. I cannot imagine making an offer which was not already vetted by the business manager and superintendent to determine the full expense of. I also cannot imagine making a formal offer without having previously met with each and every school committee member to ensure that the committee was fully supported it. Our teachers are without a contract just prior to the end of the fiscal year and the end of the school year. I feel that Dr. Ural's irresponsible actions toyed with the teachers' union at the 11th hour and then ripped their hearts out, further polarizing both sides. I implore the school committee to reconsider whom they have chosen as their leader. Dr. Ural has repeatedly personally disrespected both Dr. Maggie Rizzi and Dr. Carol Brown publicly and during school committee meetings. Dr. Ural, in his short time as chair, has many times attempted to restrict the authority of our superintendent and has attempted to micromanage Dr. Rizzi, which greatly negatively impacts her effectiveness. My understanding is that our well-respected legal counsel was so concerned with the school committee's actions that they have sent notice and will no longer be representing our school system. My concerns are that the irresponsible actions of Dr. Erdem Ural as the current chair of our school committee and the dysfunction of the school committee under his leadership have negatively impacted teacher contract negotiations, created a hostile work environment for our superintendent, will drive out some of our excellent leadership team and staff, and will jeopardize our ability to bring a new high school to completion. I wish to express my complete lack of confidence in Dr. Ural's leadership skills and sincerely hope that the committee will reconsider their choice of chair while there is still time to put things back on track before irreparable harm is done to our system. Sincerely, Tom Colburn, Stoughton citizen and former school committee member.
Thank you. Can I have a copy of what you read?
Absolutely. Here's a copy for the record.
We normally don't allow personal attacks in this period, but I mean, since you are the former chair, you probably know better. So we'll take this into under advisement. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. I have a copy here for everybody at the table.
Thank you so much.
Next person is
The kids.
David Bunce Grenham.
Oh, great, the kids. Hi.
Hi, how's it going? I'm David Bunch-Grennan.
David Wilson.
This is my friend David. I met David in 9th grade. We've grown to be very close friends, and one of the things that he's brought to our friendship is lacrosse. I was never really good at any sports until I found lacrosse, and I mean, David's always been a good friend, and when I was introduced to the game, I loved it immediately. So I was approached by Dean, and Dean picked up David Wilson and I to be coaches for the U15 team. When I met these kids, I was amazed. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to coach these kids? These kids are crazy. But as the first season went on, we grew closer, and then it was great. It was actually great. We didn't win very many games last year.
We were the first team to actually win only one game.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. This year, on returning, we had most of the same kids from last year, and they came back with a fire, bringing in kids from different levels that haven't played before, who were just excited to get ready. It was really amazing because we taught each other how to play. We didn't need a sense of adult supervision because we all had a certain respect for each other, which was great. This year, returning, we've gone 13-4. We've won 13 games.
Wow.
Also beating Mansfield, which is their high school team, is D1 for lacrosse. So that's fantastic. What I have with me is what I have with me is signatures from 300 plus parents and students that would like to see lacrosse come to the high school. I have them all right here. And I have a list of 24 returning players that will be moving up to the high school next year, and 13 kids that would like to play. And this was just the first meeting for lacrosse, so I think that's amazing. we really want lacrosse here because it presents new opportunities for scholarships, whether it be showing Stoughton in a different light for sports, giving kids different activities on whether it be like in school or outside, which is great. Also, giving kids the ability to attend colleges that they really want to go to by getting scholarships for lacrosse. I mean, it's a great sport. All the kids love it. It's a fast-moving game. Everybody's active. The kids love each other. These are my brothers. I mean, I love them all very much. And to bring this to the high school and kind of get to meet new kids that are interested in the sport and grow along with them and kind of create a foundation to lacrosse for future generations. These kids, it wasn't just me, it wasn't just David, it was all of us. We all came together. We worked very hard. We've already started fundraising. We did a fundraiser at Town Spa, which got us a good amount of money, and we're going to keep working. We've reached out to Dick's Sporting Good, U.S. Lacrosse. We've asked for donations. We got donations from the fire department. Everyone's looking to help. So yeah.
The main thing that we're like.
Please talk in the mic, please.
It's for the camera.
The main thing we're really concerned, like most people think we're going to be concerned about, is worth ethic. These kids right here have that. They are the most dedicated kids I've ever seen to a sport. Couple of them back there. When they brought in a couple of new kids, they didn't just abandon them. They didn't try and. There was no weakness to our team. They brought them in. They tried to help them get better. 3 of our kids who actually moved up. Never mind about that. Sorry. But what we're really like, we're really trying to just continue the youth of lacrosse to keep striving for something. We want them to like feel like they can be the star player for Stoughton. We want them to feel like they can become like that main guy that everyone knows in town. We're trying to also keep people in shape, which is another thing people are worried about. Again, we're fundraising. Everyone's helping. We're striving to get this sport for our high school.
Okay. Where was I going with this? I mean, everybody's been working very, very hard. Everybody's we want people to come and support us, and that's what this list was. And we've reached out to different towns. We've talked to them about starting leagues and stuff. We've made friends from everywhere. These kids are so hardworking to the point where they'll discipline themselves and run up the hill, and they'll work very hard to get things done. So also this is our last year. We become seniors next year. It'd be amazing if we got the team for next year and we'd be able to play for one last year. Go out with a bang or something. So that'd be fantastic, and kind of show these kids with hard work, like you can do anything. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay, well, moving right along, we'll go to item number 4 on our agenda, which is the Stoughton High School lacrosse program. And I will turn the floor over to Dr. Rizzi.
There are a lot of you who have been working with Mr. Donahue, our athletic director, and Ms. Enochian has been a part of that effort as well to talk about how a lacrosse program could get started at the high school. So we have a process in place by which sports get started, and it required some research to see what the numbers presently would support, and then finding places to practice and play. And now we believe with the availability of the community field and also the Gibbons field, the soccer field at the Gibbons School to practice on, we need to find places that we could accommodate the practicing and the games while still supporting the sports that already exist in the high school. So I think that Mr. Donahue was able to achieve that, so that barrier is gone. And then the requirement for starting a program, a new sport at the high school, is that the people who are interested in that sport do fundraising. And the number we try and reach to start a sport is $20,000. It sounds like you've already started that. That was the threshold that was expected for all the recent sports that we had started. And then Mr. Donahue did a breakdown of what it actually would cost to start lacrosse. And for next year, it came out to be about $23,000. We're happy with the $20,000 threshold, and honestly, if we're getting to the time when we're really going to have to start in the spring and you're really close, then if the athletic program's had a good year, we can certainly help you close that gap. So the fundraising is what will be up to you. And if you can be successful in the fundraising, he's already got all the prices, all the things ready to order, all the places to play and so on are organized. And as we've done with other sports, Mr. Donahue is recommending starting with a JV team and doing that for a year or two and then bringing the program up into the varsity level. And that's generally how sports are started and how a lot of other schools have done it. So at this point, it would be possible, presuming the fundraising was successful, to have a JV team for boys in the high school next year. So next spring, a year from this season that just ended. So if it's something that you want to do and that's acceptable to you in terms of planning to raise some money, we could go forward with a JV team for next year and begin the program that way. And then after year 1 and 2, look at whether we just can expand it upward to a varsity team. And we may have an issue in time. If we are successful in getting a new high school, we're going to have to scramble around for places for all of our sports to play for the period of time that the school's being built. But we'll cope with that for all of our sports, and that doesn't really appear to be a reason to not go forward. So within those parameters, we could certainly go forward, and Mr. Donahue could get started right away, and you could get started your fundraising right away.
Dr. Brown.
I just think it's great that these kids are self-disciplining themselves. If they, I like the way that you spoke well. Gentlemen, wherever you are, you all spoke very well. And I like the fact that kids actually came out. That shows dedication. You all keep it up, and I think it's great.
Anybody else from the board? Not yet. We'll let you comment.
If I may.
Yes, please.
First of all, David and David, you're two articulate and passionate people, and really what impressed me most was your exuberance for coaching the younger kids. They are very, very fortunate kids to have you guys as role models and coaches, so thank you. I don't have a question per se. I guess I'd like to hear what some of the comments are. I have questions concerning field and practice and other things, but I'd really rather have the full set of comments and questions from...
You have a question or comment?
This weekend, I just came from one of my grandchildren's, I guess you'd call it, pennant. And the one thing that always stands out is the dedication of the coaches and giving of their time, etc. And the people who went out of this is obviously the kids. And I don't think they realize how much they win out of this because they're too young to really understand it. So, yes, I want to say to you, gentlemen, and the coaches and everybody else that wants to get this team going and all of the signatures that you have there, I want to say thank you very much to all of you. And I think Dr. Rizzi said, yes, it can go on, and I'm glad it can go on. Thank you.
Do you have a question, Gabriel?
I don't have a question. I just think that it's overwhelming how wonderful everyone is out here to support such a great program, and I'm looking forward to going to a lacrosse game.
Me too.
I had a question. So we are saying that they need to raise $20,000?
Correct.
So
And
that would be contingent.
That's Well, that is contingent, and that is the way sports have started. That's when we begin sports in the high school, so we would have to be fair to the other sports and how they got started. However, $20,000 is not quite sufficient, but Mr. Donahue feels that he could make up the difference, even if they're close.
Right. But he also, on his memo, he also mentions that we may be required to have a ladies team. In that case, he needs another $15,000 that needs to be fundraised if we are required.
Ultimately, that will be the case, potentially. So right now, the last two sports that we started at the high school were girls volleyball and girls hockey.
Oh,
so we are not at the moment out of Title IX compliance. The data, and he did a lot of research, does not unfortunately support a girls team at this time. The numbers definitely support the need for a boys team. But looking forward, the expectation is that there will be more girls that will come forward who will be interested in a girls team, will be possible to field. It was not his recommendation that the additional $15,000 be raised right now.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to invite you, I don't know your name, but could you also address whether raising $20,000 is doable?
Well, so sure. My name is Tony Salucci. My son plays on the U15 team. I don't believe this is going to be a difficult task to raise 20 grand in several months. I'll just use as a recent example the wonderful work that the DECA program, not DECA, they do a great job too. The Construction Challenge teams. 2 teams went down to Tennessee this year and in 4 weeks raised $19,000 to get their teams to Tennessee. With the dedication of the students, these guys did an incredible job this year, from clearing out an old field, making it usable, inviting other towns in to see what we can do in a year. It was spectacular. With the parents that are in this room that lent their time, their energy, their acceptance, we'll have no trouble raising this. We've already been reaching out to companies that we all work for. And one of the questions I have with the committee is, will there be a chance of getting a letter from you, from the Stoughton School Committee, that identifies this as a valid donation, so that we can hand it out to companies? They won't give us substantial cash without that.
Yep.
Makes sense. But I think if you look at around you here, this is 50% of the kids that played. Everyone's excited about this, so it shouldn't be an issue. And just one last point. Last weekend we played in the Massachusetts Jamboree at Fort Devens. It's a 4-day tournament. 440 teams from Massachusetts participate. It was 12 fields from 8:45 to 5:45, completely packed. It was great, and the U15 team went 3-0. Nice. Second year in the league. As a parent, the highlight of the lacrosse program for me was the BG and Wilson. They took their own time as sophomores and juniors in high school to give up what they could be doing with their friends outside of school or in other programs to teach my son how to play lacrosse. That's the dedication you have here. These kids are going to help each other out. So thanks for your time. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Regarding your question about the donations, Katie, Ms. Enochian and I spoke to Athletic Director Ryan Donahue together. He said as soon as the school committee votes on it, there will be an account set up for...
There's actually...
There's going to be a school account set up.
There's actually already an account set up. He said he just wanted to make sure that there was a formal vote. That we could put it in there.
So it will be, donation will be given to the school account, accumulate in there. Any other questions?
Mr. Dolinsky.
Oh, Mr. Dolinsky. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. A couple of years ago, while I sat on this distinguished committee, I was an advocate
for the lacrosse program. Unfortunately, the vote went the other way. I am strongly in favor of this program, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that this is an excellent program. My grandson has played in the program. It's excellent. And the only thing I'd like to comment on, we are in negotiations regarding community field. That is not definite at this point.
Okay.
So Mr. Donahue, myself, Mr. Kowalczyk have met, and nothing is definite. We cleared the air on a couple of issues, but I just want to make sure everybody knows community field is not definite at this point. But we are in negotiations on that.
So just to clarify your comment, the community field is Stoughton property but maintained by Stoyak.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You'll work it out.
Okay, one last comment.
Do you want to go to the mic?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I'll be quick. This is amazing, don't get me wrong, okay? And thank you so much for this, okay? But we have some phenomenal young men right here who want to play varsity lacrosse. So before we vote, I'm just asking you, can we please just, I'd like a little bit more understanding as to why we're limiting ourselves to JV, because my experience has been in my 31 years as a lacrosse player, and I played for Newton South, which was one of the worst teams ever, but they had a program for about 30 years, that a varsity program is where you start because it sets the foundation. And we already have a varsity team ready to go. And I don't know what's going to happen to these young men who've been working so hard the past couple of years. They might not even be eligible to play JV. So what happens to them? I just want that, please, taken into account before you vote. These young men deserve to play on a team, and I just want to make sure that it counts into your vote, please. Thank you.
When we talked to Mr. Donahue, he was. We asked him the same question. You know, we got a team ready to go for our varsity team, and you know, why not? And he said, you know, he's concerned about the concussions or safety issues. He wants to build up some kind of confidence in the effort, and I don't know if Dr. Rizzi would like to elaborate more.
Safety is a big concern. All of the other programs in the Hockomock have gone JV, and then as the students get stronger, move up to varsity. You have to start somewhere. Varsity is not generally the place that high school sports start, and certainly not lacrosse in our surrounding communities. He would not be supportive of starting right away with a varsity team. So his recommendation is JV, build up for 2 years, and those people become a varsity team as the program is successful, and then looking at girls' team coming in the second or the third year. I had thought the community field issue was settled. The community field is vital to making even a JV program work. I'm going to move forward saying that the expectation is that will happen. There are not the places to field teams, nor the financial resources, nor the level of comfort in terms of the trainer being available and so on. So it really is, it starts at JV, or we go back to the drawing board and have a conversation at another time. It would very much not be his recommendation to jump in with a varsity team. And I don't know the issue of eligibility for age for playing on a JV team, so.
Could they be JV? Yes. Okay, I feel good about that. All right.
So do we have a motion from the board?
I make a motion that we accept and move forward to support these kids in this lacrosse.
I second it.
Is it a JV or a regular varsity?
Well, the way she stated is that since it's not an age criteria, that these gentlemen can still have a chance to play as junior varsity as long as I just want them to play.
So the motion is to move the superintendent's recommendation and start the junior varsity team.
Dr. Erlen? Dr. Erlen?
Yeah, any discussion?
Yes.
I have a question. I know you're concerned about the varsity, okay? Even though this isn't going to be for the varsity, can the varsity still play?
I think that, well, there's two ways to answer that, and I'm not saying I'm qualified to answer that, but Mr. Donahue, I have never spoken to him, and I've never most parents have never spoken to Mr. Donahue about his concerns.
So this has all been done through the committee and the respective procedure. But I wouldn't be able to answer that question. Perhaps
Can I address some of the concerns that he had spoken to me and
Yeah,
Kevin
please.
about? He had the same safety concerns that he had spoken to Dr. Brizzi about, that safety. I'm not going to be foolish enough to stand here and say I'm not for child or player safety. But I don't understand why, if you make it a varsity sport and they're not the best at it, they're at more or a greater risk than if they start at JV and they're really good at it, that they're now not in harm's way of getting any kind of injury. He's sort of kind of saying just because they're lousy at JV, which he's also presuming that they're going to not be good, that they're now more injury risk. I don't see how that is the case. I don't see why you all of a sudden get to become more injury if you're not the best athlete. I don't get that argument.
The other thing I seem to remember, Ms. Enochian can correct me if I'm wrong, is that most teams have both JV and regular varsity. And if you just have one, then you have some scheduling problems.
He did say that. He said that his job would be tougher if he only had a JV program because we're 10 years behind the curve.
Yes.
He's saying that everybody, or he expressed to me that the way they normally start is everyone starts at JV and they build their way up. But it's kind of like a 10-year-old model because all the towns that did that are already done, and we're the last guy, we're the last town in. So it's like he said he's going to have a problem scheduling teams. I have the confidence that he could do it. I mean, he's a very bright man, and he said he thinks he can overcome that, but I don't know why you'd want to make his job more difficult.
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, before he is very clear that his recommendation is a JV team. He is not saying it would make his job more difficult. And safety is a matter of the amount of trainers and trainer time available for children playing a sport. It has nothing to do with whether or not the children are good at the sport. And it's not just lacrosse where the process is JV moving up to a varsity team after 2 years of experience in JV. So because of the financing and the schedule being set up for the $20,000 will support a JV team, will not support a varsity team or a JV and a varsity team. We are already pressed for places to play and practice, and it turns out now we're even a little more pressed than we thought when we put together this recommendation. It will not be viable, and Mr. Donahue will not support it. And he isn't available tonight, but he will be back to this committee to explain to them why it's not going to work that way. So this is a great opportunity to get lacrosse started in Stoughton. If you would like to get lacrosse started at Stoughton High School, this is the proper way to go about it. And that it's been looked at for a long period of time, and this is the most viable way to do it. And you have to start somewhere. And there's always going to be the first year for something, and as students grow up through the program, it will be less of a problem over time.
Dr. Brown.
So I have a question for you. So is there some way that we can get or bring more trainers here so that we can alleviate the safety issues? So that these boys
Dr. Brown,
I don't know.
We have an athletic trainer that the district pays, and she has some interns who help her. There's not any money in the budget for an additional athletic trainer, which is a professional salary.
But if you vote to make this a varsity sport as opposed to a JV sport, her job hasn't gotten any more difficult. She's just gonna, be a facilitator for a varsity sport versus JV. Her job hasn't changed. It's just the title that those boys get.
And you were involved in these conversations, so you have been speaking with Mr. Donahue about this. I think you're in a better position than some of the folks who haven't talked to him to understand his concerns. And so I'll just reiterate that this is the way he believes is the safe, proper, appropriate, and most successful way to go forward with the program, and that the $20,000 will support that. And we are still in a situation where the space to play might be an issue. So the recommendation at this point in time from either of us is not going to change on this.
So can you accept that so the kids can play?
I mean, I would say this. You have to start somewhere, but
Yeah.
I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't argue for a varsity
I
program.
hear what you're saying, and I understand you have your team behind you, and I know what they want to hear, but we wanted to get initiated. We wanted to start, and if there's some way we can do it, as they're saying, as far as whatever the criteria is, so that these boys can also play. I mean, let's not get hung up on a label so our kids don't play.
I agree. Like I said, I just felt I'd be remiss if I didn't argue for them.
Okay.
So what we can do is take the vote for junior varsity today, and it's too bad Mr. Donahue is not here. So if you are really aggrieved
Are you
by
okay about these kids?
not having the varsity team, then you can come back. We can have another discussion with Mr. Donahue. But this vote will at least get you started on doing the fundraising.
Question.
Yes.
How long have you been playing as a league sport?
2 years.
Okay, okay. I heard two different numbers. I guess as a parent, and I don't know the game of lacrosse, I can't wait to come and see a game. I've watched practice fields when I've had my children over at their instrument lessons in Concord and Wellesley and other places that have been clearly playing it for a long time. As a parent, my bigger concern with safety is not so much that our kids aren't playing up to a certain caliber. It's that other kids perhaps have been playing it for a very long time, and that there's a level of aggression, and again, not sure how aggressive lacrosse is, that would cause a bigger safety issue. Don't know, but I would suggest that we go with the junior varsity, or the varsity, junior varsity, I'm sorry, program. But keep the conversation open with Mr. Donahue to evaluate it after the first year. If it really is, the level of play is what it is, and these kids are that good. And the numbers are growing. You may have a need for both a JV and a varsity before you know it.
In a better fight.
So any other discussion from the board? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
So it is unanimous. Thank you. Chair declares a 5-minute recess.
Thanks.
Okay, we are back. The next item on our agenda is STA, Student Teachers Association. I got a call from Ms. McDonough this afternoon. She said they will not be making they do not need this slot for today.
Okay.
Next item is school committee attorneys. I just put this in here to get give the people an update. There has been some wrong information being circulated. One of them is nobody wants to be a student's attorney, which is not true. People are lining up to be a student's attorney. And the other one is former school committee attorney resigned because of me. Again, I asked her, she wouldn't tell me what it is. If Dr. Rizzi knows better, she can tell us. But the issue was that our lawyer bills were out of control. I got, in fact, Joyce may have seen this one too. There was an email from North Reading. Do you remember?
I saw that,
it?
yeah.
They said their lawyer bills for the whole year, if there are no negotiations, $15,000. If there is negotiations, $30,000 for the whole year. And for ours was $24,000 just for the month of February. And the bills didn't have any detail so that I could tell, who talked to the lawyer, what, or what happened, what is the, what was the reason for being it that high. So, and I think the previous school committee was also not very. They found the former attorney not very responsive. So they were they were looking for other options, and in fact, Dr. Rizzi had collected some resumes for lawyers. And when I became the chair, I tried to set up a meeting to meet with the previous firm, and I could never do that because she was a great lawyer, but she was very busy. So she resigned. She left us at the end of May, and I think it was the end of May. And so we looked around. I mean, I did. So I found somebody with very good credentials, much like 2/3 the hourly rate that we were paying the previous firm. And we had them over for an interview last Thursday, and there was 4 school committee members present, and the school committee unanimously decided to hire him for the purpose of collective bargaining and what was the other one?
General law. General counsel.
Yes, so that's what we did, but we are also looking at the other options because I had gotten one quote from one of the really reputable broad spectrum law firms, and that quote is for all the services, so I'd like to bring them here for an interview with the school committee. And we will also look at the other firms. So I'm at this point, I'm asking if anybody else on the board and the superintendent's office would like to recommend any law firm. So now that we have a lawyer, we can start looking at the other options, more permanent options. So this law firm that I got the quote from can come. We have a meeting next Tuesday, the 24th. So we can have them come at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock. What's the pleasure of the board?
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
First of all, I'm pleased that you're interviewing other ones, because when you started out by saying there were plenty of firms that were lining up to get into Stoughton, I was a little bit distressed that we only had one to interview before we hired, understanding that it was potentially an interim situation. And I know that he was actually quite surprised that we weren't interviewing others as well. Before we line up somebody for an interview essentially a week from now, I would like to know that we have, as a group or had at some subset, put together a list of questions that will be asked of all of the interviewees, because I'm sorry, I came with a set of questions that were very specific to what my interests were at the time. If we're told, and as you're saying, alluding to the fact that this may be all law, and I kind of think I might object to the replacement of the special ed law, we need to develop a set of consistent questions so that we're evaluating all of our options with the same criteria, as opposed to just jumping in and starting to interview, and then a couple weeks later somebody else comes and we think of something new to ask. I don't think it's fair to the people we're interviewing. I don't think it meets our goals.
Well, if you ask everybody the same questions, then they would know the answers. The next ones that come would know the answers to.
I hope they all know the answers to all of our questions. Is how we feel they relate to us and to our specific needs. And we know that the questions will go in a different tangent based on what they answer, and that's fine, but I think you need a framework. You don't interview an employee without the same set of questions to start with.
Dr. Adam?
Yes, Dr. Brown.
So I think she's just asking, she's not saying that it's wrong, she just wants it to be equitable so that everybody is being asked the same questions for the same criteria before we make a determination. That's all she's asking.
Okay. Mr. Soares.
I think Ms. Husseini has an excellent idea. I think asking the same questions to all lawyers and getting their feedback from them, I think, is an excellent idea. That way you can evaluate and have a better understanding of where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I agree with Joyce.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then you guys don't want to meet this. This is the law firm that Dr. Rizzi met, she had a conference call. I don't know if you had a conference call. You had a telephone call, and then one or two lawyers came to your office to visit.
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing this conversation. If you're speaking of Stoneman Chandler Miller,
yes.
I did have a phone conversation and then met with one of the attorneys in my office.
So what's well, I guess what we can do is schedule them to come over on the 24th, or you can say, we are going to develop some questions, so that would take probably another meeting to schedule that. Yes?
How long will it take us? How many questions would you like, Joyce?
Well, it's not how many questions we have. It's the topics that we want to hit broadly. When we did the interviews that brought in Murphy Hesse Toomey, we shortlisted 3 or 4 firms to interview and spent a good hour to 2 hours with each firm. Kind of covered the bulk of them in one day, as I recall. And it's really more just hitting on those topics. I mean, you heard some of the things that I brought up were their thoughts on future trends in terms of what's happening, with court cases that are happening all around. Give us an idea of really how if their views are parallel to our views, and then some specific questions. And it's not a number, but I can submit my list of questions that I asked by email to all of you, and if you want to add them, I'm just not sure you'll have.
Well, that would be a serial communication.
Okay, then I will. Okay.
So what we need
I will
to
submit
do
them
is
to Dr. Rizzi. She will have my questions. If anybody who's going to work on a committee forming questions could get them from her.
What we can do is we can at the next meeting everybody can bring their questions and we can work on the questions. We can have Ms. Shea forward all the questions to everybody. And then everybody comes with the set of questions, and then at the meeting we could edit them, or we could add to it, or we could delete it.
Dr. Erdem, I have a question. So prior to us submitting questions, could we just have an array of topics so we'll know what we're questioning on? That would help me out. So if we're talking collective bargaining, I'll know to ask some questions in that particular venue, or if we're talking about other laws, general laws that we're going through with school, open meeting laws and all those type of things. If we can have some specific topics, then I can kind of frame the kind of questions I want to ask.
So this firm would be doing general law, they would be doing special ed and collective bargaining.
Okay, thank you.
Have you had the discussion with?
No, this is the first time hearing of any of this. And I would say if I were doing a hiring process, as we do when we hire people, there would be a small committee working on the process. The list of questions and the topics would be explored, and then an interview process would be developed that would give each of the candidates who would be chosen based on specific criteria that we had designed an opportunity to interview and hear those same questions. It sounds to me like what Dr. Urell is talking about is an entirely different process, and whatever process you want to go through is obviously up to the committee entirely. Right. The special ed issues are still being handled at the present time by Murphy Hesse Toomey, because their relationship with our special ed department long predates the relationship that they had with a different team with the school committee.
Okay.
They have withdrawn from working with the school committee. They have not withdrawn from our special ed work.
Oh, great.
And that has been a very satisfactory relationship with a different team of attorneys. So, you're talking this through in a way that would be different from a traditional hiring process, but
this is different.
Whatever role, however you decide you want to do it, then that's the way you decide you want to do it.
So, it's the will of the board, as Dr. Rizzi said. If you are in a hurry, then we would go this route, do interviews, and then, it's a good idea to come up with a set of questions. Or we can take the, more formal route, and that would take longer, obviously. Yes.
Given that we have representation, I would rather do it right than do it quickly.
Me too. I agree with her.
What do you guys feel like?
We have a lawyer now, though,
So you're happy with the lawyer that we have, and
Well, we're happy that we have representation for the time being. We don't know enough.
So how do you guys want to work out the questions? Do you want to do it at a meeting, or?
I would rather you formed a subcommittee. They had two people that work out the questions.
So any volunteers for the subcommittee?
If we do not, I have some work deadlines pending over the next two or so weeks. If we're not on that short of a deadline, I can be on a subcommittee. But I could not if it were turnaround questions in a week.
Well, okay, let me pose the question to the board. What is, how long do you want to spend on looking for lawyers? Do you want to do it within the next month or within the next 6 months?
I think, my personal opinion,
yes,
we have a lawyer already, so we're not really in dire straits to get another group of lawyers. I think we need lawyers who cover everything, though.
Well, we do, but we don't have the cost savings built into it, because with this firm, and we'll be looking, if the direction of the board is to do cost savings, Murphy Hesse Toomey charges $225, whether you get a senior lawyer or a junior lawyer, and we do not have a fee agreement with them. So we could demand that their bills be more detailed. So I mean, we could continue working with them. The new lawyer we hired is $150 an hour, and the third option is getting a whole spectrum law firm. Then we could enter into a retainer agreement. So instead of paying as we go, the retainer would cover for the whole year for everything except like a court appearances or the Bureau of Special Education, BSEA. So that would be extra. So I think we have a few months to decide. So if you are willing to let the process take its course. So is that the consensus?
Pretty good.
Okay, I might add, though, when you talk about hourly rates, if you notice the North Reading memo, they pay $350 an hour. An hourly rate isn't a guarantee that you're actually going to get somebody cheaper. It depends on how efficiently they work and the kinds of overheads that they build in. And if you've got somebody who bills a lot less but has to do their own office work versus somebody who's got a large firm behind them and a great deal of service, it's not a fair comparison to say they're going to be cheaper. And I really don't know that now's the time, and I think we have time to craft it, but I really don't know that we want to make the decision as a board to separate from our special education law, who has been representing us for a great deal of time without engaging, without the chair and the superintendent and the director of special ed sitting down and having a conversation about that. I think that for us to do it is irresponsible.
Can I say something, Dr. Allen?
Yes.
So I guess I kind of agree with Maggie, and I'm sorry, Dr. Rizzi, in reference to maintaining the special ed attorney, because there are things that they've been doing, and we want continuity because they know the kids, they know the situation, they know the IEPs, they know the laws. That would be a disservice to change right now. That's something that it's a longevity relationship. I think as long as it's working, we might want to leave that alone, because if not, we're going to get backlash on a whole lot of other things, federal-wise, that we can not have to address. That's just my opinion.
Well, the transition would, during the transition, you would let the former law firm work out the cases that's ongoing. So there's always cooperation between the firms. But that's, again, up to the will of the board. So what I'm hearing is to form a subcommittee. So I will, so you guys are saying 2 months horizon or a 6 month horizon?
I don't think you can set the time. I think what you want to do is solicit enough interest to shortlist. and then pick, when you've got 3 or 4 firms that you want to talk to, do them in relatively short time so that you've got the basis of comparison instead of doing one in June and one in August. So whenever it is that you have the responses and a short list of people to interview is when it is.
Okay. So given that, so we are looking for two-pronged approach. One is coming up with the questions. So I request that you send all your questions to Mary Shea, Miss Shea, and then I will be on that subcommittee, and then we'll find another volunteer who wants to be on it. And then we will also please forward your suggestions for law firm, because there are, I call the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They referred me to their website. There is a portion that for school committee lawyers, and there are very large number of names in there. So what we need to do is wean out.
Based on their area of expertise and based on what we need, what our basic needs are in the area of expertise, I think we need to look at it from that perspective.
Okay. So we are looking for questions and suggestions for law firms. Okay. Next item on our agenda is status of unfair labor practice complaints. Would you like to speak to that, Dr. Rizzi?
I didn't really have any input on this agenda, and this is a topic that most commonly is seen in executive session. So I didn't really know what kind of a conversation you wanted to have, or what sorts of materials to bring. Everyone was provided with everything that Murphy Hesse was working on, and so say more about where you'd like this conversation to go.
Well, you sent me an email saying that we don't have the unfair labor practice cases. We don't have a lot of paperwork at the moment, as that was handled in Jeannie's office. Mary has asked that they send over what they have, and we will compile it as soon as possible. So what I was trying to figure out at this point is how many cases we have open, how many cases have been resolved, and what is the next hearing date?
I believe we have only one remaining, and our new attorney, Mr. Emerson, has requested an extension of a week to get up to speed on that and to confer with the committee as to how you wish at this point to respond, since it's a different committee sitting at this present time than made a decision about that particular case when it went forward.
So which one is the only one that's open?
Is it proper to discuss this in open
Sure.
session?
Sure.
It's the matter of the STA speaking at the school committee's meeting or having the right to demand to speak at the school committee's meetings.
That's good.
To my knowledge, that is the only remaining open unfair labor practice.
Okay. Any other discussion on the unfair labor practice complaints? No. Status of the STA class action suit against the town of Stoughton. I just put that as an update in here because we have been sued, and the town manager was saying, maybe the town's liability insurance would cover the cost of.
Dr. Ural, this is under executive session as well. I have a really hard time.
No, it's not under executive session. This is whether what's the town liability insurance will cover it or not. And that was discussed not in the executive session, so we have a duty to report it. So Mr. Hartman told us that the town's liability insurance will not be covering the cost for Stoughton defense, Stoughton Teacher Association legal costs, and triple damages we might be liable for.
Well, it's certainly, and again, this was your agenda, and I didn't know this was going to be on it until it came out Friday. Certainly, it would be my recommendation that any matters of litigation be discussed in executive session.
I agree, but
with
this was
the
just
attorney or.
This was just a piece of information that was mentioned at the open meeting part.
But your language is speculative.
Important.
It may be. You're saying something in open session that people would perhaps perceive as definitive, and we do not have that defined by any attorney. And I just get very uneasy that you're using, like I said, just kind of squishy language that is being interpreted by 10 different viewers 10 different ways. I don't know.
What's the purpose?
What I am saying is that it is definitive that town's liability insurance will not cover.
That was a definitive, but then you got into saying what we might be liable for, and you're not the attorney,
So
and you were.
it's definitive that they won't cover the our defense costs. It won't be defended by the liability insurance company, and the other damages will also not be covered. That's the definitive part. So if there are no damages, they won't be covered. If there are damages,
Not
they
what you
won't
said
be
earlier.
covered.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on item 8? Seeing none? Next item is collective bargaining update.
I'm going to object as well, because as long as there's not a contract settled, this is still an executive session matter.
Thank you. The collective bargaining update, we do not have anything to report because teachers are not going to coming to bargaining because they say they have a deal. And again, some people try to distort the truth, saying that they will be, the negotiating team did not ask the teachers to come to the negotiating table. It was the person who's not doing it. That's not true, and teachers are on the record for saying that they are not coming back to the bargaining table.
A question.
Yes.
So who? I guess I'm lost. So who made the deal? Where
Can we have this executive session? I'm not comfortable with this conversation.
I'm not understanding where you're going because I heard nothing about this, but we can talk about this in executive session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on item 8? Item 9? All right. Fiscal 14 budget. Item 10. Dr. Rizzi?
I just have one question about the FY14 budget. We are closing out the budget now. There was 1%, approximately $320,000, that had been put in the budget for a settlement. There has not been a settlement. And the $160,000 difference between the estimated step cost and the actual step cost, coming to a total of $480,000. And it's my recollection that the Finance Committee subcommittee meeting 2 weeks ago, they specifically asked, would this money be going back to the town? And it is my recommendation that since this was money that was set aside for a contract settlement with the teachers, and there is not one, my recommendation is that this would go back to the town, and I'm asking you to authorize me to do that as you had spoken to the Finance Committee about. So I just wanted some clarification on that matter one way or another before we dispense with the $480,000, which was meant for a teacher settlement.
So we have one more meeting before the end of June. Are we going to be, do you envision we'll be doing any transfers?
Potentially, there will be.
So why don't we wait till the next meeting to talk about it with respect to the transfers?
Well, if it is your wish that it not go back to the town, we will not have time to spend it if we wait until the next meeting.
Oh, so if we, but what if the teachers want to come and they say they want to negotiate and they want to make a deal by June 30th?
If the money is going to return to the town, then it will go back to the town on June 30th. If you do not wish it to go back to the town and you wish it to be spent on other things, as had been discussed in previous months and so on, that money should be spent on other things, then if it's going to get spent, it has to be done now, or it will go back to the town by default because the books have to close and the items for which it was expended will have to be in by June 30th. So we can't decide the last week of June to spend $480,000.
So I don't think we will ask you to spend money that was earmarked for teachers' contract. I don't think the school committee, I mean, I shouldn't talk for anybody, so that goes without saying. But so you're recommending that money, if it's not spent on teachers' contract by June 30th, go back to town. Is that what you're recommending?
I recommend that if it's not spent on a settlement with the teachers, that it go back to the town. Yes.
Are you looking to vote on it?
I don't know. I mean, that's like a no-brainer to me.
Can I ask a question, Dr.
Yes.
So you mean somebody left $480,000 on the table?
Well, that money was, when the budget was created, it was created for the teachers if there was a settlement.
Could you give me the price again? I'm sorry.
$480,000.
So they left $480,000 on the table?
Yes, because there has not been a settlement yet. So earlier in the year, there was a discussion that the administration was, and I believe the statement was, spending the teachers' money on things that were not the teachers. In fact, that was not the case. However, this would be money that was earmarked for the teachers. So, but I'm asking for a vote on this because last year when money went back to the town, there were certainly people sitting at this table at this present time who had made statements that they did not think it was a good idea to put money back to the town. And so since some of those folks are now sitting on the board, I want to make sure that before making that decision that I have the support of the committee to do so.
I think that's a little bit of misrepresentation because the talk was about not spending the money earmarked for instruction, not spending the money that was earmarked for maintenance. I don't have my list of the transfers. So if it is something taken as a contingency, we never returned the contingency. I mean, not the time this is my 6th year on the board, we never returned the contingency. But if it is for contingency, I wholeheartedly agree that it should be unspent contingency should be returned to the town. But the issue was, why didn't we spend the maintenance money? Why didn't we spend the instruction money? Now I saw on the Bill Warren's last meeting, we spent like $450,000 on iPads. So in June, we bought $450,000 worth of iPads, and I asked Mr. Ford, is this something in the budget? He said yes. So I would like to know, where was it in the budget, and why? If it was in the budget, why didn't we buy it earlier this year so that students could have benefited from it?
Since you had the conversation.
I don't specifically recall this conversation.
Okay, but maybe you can answer it now.
Oh, so to bring it back to my original question, I would like a sense from the committee if it is your wish to send back to the town the $480,000 that was earmarked for a settlement.
What's your recommendation, Superintendent?
Excuse me.
That is my recommendation.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that it's also what the committee would like. But the decision has to be made soon because it's the time is ticking away, and if it's going, so it has to be decided
Can I ask
soon.
one more question, Dr.
Well,
Bowman?
Mr. Soers raised his
I'm
hands.
sorry, I didn't see him.
I guess I'm naive. Why, when you know that we're not going to use this money, why do you want us or the board, and you keep saying Dr. Earl and it's the board, why do you want the board to vote when we're not going to spend this money? And why does it have to be done today, and why not next week? I guess I'm confused at that.
Too late.
Well,
I understand,
when there's
but why
money,
is it too late?
When there's money left at the end of the year, the
Right.
decision is it can go back to the town or it can get spent on things in the line items
I heard
that it
that,
was originally budgeted, or can be asked to be transferred to another line item where there might be a shortfall or something that we could buy with the end of the year money. It's often called end of the year money. This specific money, and there's been a lot of conversation about this all year, was built into the budget for the purpose of a settlement with the STA. Since there is no settlement, I feel reticent spending the money on anything else. And so I need a direction from the board, and if I didn't say the board before, I certainly mean the entire board, to either return this money to the town because there has not been a settlement with the teachers, or if it is your will instead that it be spent on things and not returned to the town, that decision has to be made right now, because with only 2.5 weeks left of the month, if it's going to be spent, it will have to be spent right now. If it's going to be returned, then there's nothing that needs to be done with it until June 30th.
Okay, then. Apparently you think it's going to be spent on something. What do you think it's going to be spent on?
No, sir. I'm asking that it not be spent, but that it be returned to the town.
But that if were our
I think
desire
the
to spend it.
chairman already stated that it's not going to be
No,
spent.
but that's a board decision, not the chairman's
Not his decision.
Okay.
That's why she's asking us to
Well,
vote.
See, the point is that I believe at the meeting that the chairman said that, yes, that would go back, and I agreed that it would go back. I don't see us spending it on anything else, and at the end of the year, it automatically goes back, not to the finance committee, but to the town budget. So I guess I don't fully understand why we're spending so much time on this when I believe it's going back to the town. And you, for some reason, don't believe it's, you, for some reason, need some type of a confirmation to put yourself at ease to make sure that it is going back. Am I correct?
May I?
Wait, let me maybe a better question would be, should the better question would be, then we can come to quick agreement. Should this $480,000 be spent between now and the end of the year?
Educational services.
I think that's the question. That 480 was earmarked for settling the contract, and the contract is not settled. The question is, should that money be spent on something else between now and the end of the year? To that, the answer I think is obvious, and that's the.
But it's not
That's the
obvious
question.
until we vote,
Obviously,
and that is
yeah.
why she asked for a vote. And I
I have
asked
a question before I vote.
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Busy, could you help put clarity on this for me? So, the Stoughton Teachers Union left $480,000 on the table, correct?
Without a settled contract.
Because without the settled contract, they left it on the table. So, do we have an option, since you are the superintendent and you spend money, do we have the options to either, one, send it back to the town, or would you like for us to vote to facilitate some educational services or some things that needs to be utilized in the school district? Is that what you're asking us?
My recommendation is that it go back to the town, since that was the purpose for which it was earmarked. And given that, I would not feel comfortable unless you specifically directed me to spend it on anything other than what it was earmarked for because of what it is. And the reason that and that normally what would happen is we would move money into areas where we would spend
Different
it
line
on
items,
things.
yes. Yeah.
But this is money for a particular purpose in a particular period of time, and that's why I'm asking for you to make the decision.
Can I do clarity also? So you don't want it to be said that we spent their money on something else? Because I've heard this in the past.
Correct.
Okay. So getting beyond that now, so it's their fault they left $480,000 on the table. I wouldn't have, number one. Number two, I hear what you're saying. We always need money to facilitate something in reference to education. So do you want me to make a motion?
Well,
the superintendent made a recommendation.
But she's
and,
requesting something from us because she doesn't want to do it wholeheartedly, so it's not.
So that's why,
it's my turn. I'm not finished yet.
Go ahead.
Because she said that she doesn't want it to go on the record that she took this $480 that they left on the table and used their money. So what she's asking from us, correct me if I'm wrong, she's asking of us, do we send this $480,000 back that we can now use for educational services, or we just give it back to satisfy the whim that we're spending somebody's $480? Am I right?
In a sense, yes, but I am actually asking that, in fact, we do return it rather than spend it.
You don't want to spend it on any educational services?
Well, there's never enough money in education.
Oh, okay.
But never, and there are certainly things we could buy with it. However, this is a political issue as well as an educational issue.
Okay, so I'm going to go along with you.
And as this was earmarked for a settlement for the teachers and not budgeted for, we're not going to be not buying something for which we budgeted because of this money.
Understood, thank you.
And so that's my recommendation. If the committee would prefer that it be spent on other things, then it is contingent on the committee now to please tell me to do that. Otherwise, it would be my recommendation that it go back to the town because of what it was originally intended for.
And we're still conversing, so as a committee member, I would like for you to use that money for something else to benefit the children.
Ms. Hussaini?
I would like that the money still stay on the table to settle the contract with whatever last-ditch effort you have now that we have retained counsel to go back and make that happen. And if we get down to the wire and then there is no settlement, then so be it. The money goes back. But I still think there's
You think there's room?
I think there's room, and I expect the negotiating team and the new council to work on that.
I think the superintendent is also saying the same thing.
Yes.
So
I would, if I can make the motion,
Yeah, go
I would
ahead.
move the superintendent's recommendation.
With that little clarification saying that the money will be returned.
That money-
money will not be spent between now and
Correct.
30th.
That this
other
money is
than, other than settling the contract.
my motion, please, Dr.
Go
Yell.
ahead.
I make the motion that we keep the $480,000 in the salary line item to be used only for salaries, and if it is unused, it return to the town.
Is there a second?
I second that. That makes sense.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous.
Yes, I don't want the money spent.
Buys a lot of iPads.
So the iPad purchase in June was $485,000. Do we? Can you give us a little bit of background, or you're not prepared?
Well, there is money in the technology budget if there was that left at the end of the year, or money in other areas of instruction. So I would have to look more closely at that.
Okay.
This is not the week for the financial report, and there will be a final one coming.
Okay, so I'll ask you.
But it was not the money that was earmarked for the teachers' settlement.
I see where you're going with this. That same $480 we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion on fiscal 14 budget? So we are going to expect some transfers next meeting.
There is a possibility that we will need more money for unemployment.
Okay.
Sometimes the bills go down over the course of the year as people come off unemployment. That has not happened, and we may need to do a transfer, although we have done one already this year, for a small amount of additional unemployment.
Okay.
And I'll have to look as all the bills are getting tallied to see if there's anything else that we're going to need to move.
You good?
I'm fine, thank you.
Next item is 11 fiscal 15 budget. Dr. Ruzzi?
Nothing new to say about the FY15 budget.
Okay. Item 12 is a decision to administer PARC or MCAS for 2015, and there was a presentation in the packet.
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Ford. This is a decision that all districts are required to make at this time, and it is in his particular purview, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
So the presentation was simply a presentation that the state had circulated regarding this particular decision. What we need to do is decide whether we are going to move to the PARC assessment next year or stay with MCAS for an additional year. There's actually 3 decisions related to this, 2 of which I believe should be accomplished by this committee. The first of which is whether we administer MCAS from grades 3 through 8 next year, and the second is the degree at which we administer the PARC at the high school, the PARC 3 through 8, and the degree at which we administer the PARC at the high school. There's been a lot of conversations regarding this. I provided you with the documentation that the Department of Ed has been providing through a slideshow, different constituencies, to assist them in making their decision. Dr. Rizzi and I have had a number of conversations regarding this. I believe it's in the district's best interest to move on to PARC this coming year. Because if it is, in fact, I mean, it has been approved by the Board of Ed, but there's every reason to believe that we will be moving on to this assessment in the future. There's nothing to lose by going to it. I like the idea of giving our teachers and students an opportunity to get a feel for the assessment before we actually have a level of accountability in administering and our students taking it. And at the same time, there's a hold harmless clause, so there's absolutely no repercussions for moving this direction as part of this trial.
So, any questions from the board? I was expecting a long presentation, but this was the presentation that I went to and distributed the flyers to the board maybe a couple months ago.
That's probably a little more updated. There's 3 or 4 in a different series.
Oh, okay.
Come out periodically.
Okay. I think Ms. Hussaini raised her hand first.
You know what, I'll defer to Joe, because I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So you could start, and if I may then, take over.
How long have we been under MCAS?
It came about through ed reform, and it's been varying degrees based on when it was phased in. So different amounts of time for ELA, math, and science.
Can you give me I understand.
Yeah, they all came about. I wasn't actually in Massachusetts when, but it was the mid-90s.
Yeah.
93 was ed reform that brought it in line. It's a product that. That was the first?
Counted.
So.
Very good.
And what's the difference between MCAS and PARC?
It's a different style of assessment. There's actually a performance-based and an end-of-year assessment that goes along with PARC, and it's going to be administered from grades 3 through 10, or 3 through 9, and then 11, as opposed to what we currently do, which is 3 through 8, then a 10th grade assessment. The 10th grade assessment, MCAS, will remain in place this coming year for English language arts and mathematics. The science MCAS will remain in place. If they bring social studies online, that'll be an MCAS as well. But PARC will be replacing the English language arts and mathematics component of our mandated testing system.
What you just said was, does that mean that PARC does not take the place of MCAS, but MCAS is going to exist side by side with PARC?
In the areas where there is a PARC assessment, it will replace MCAS. But in the areas where PARC doesn't cover, which is science in particular, at this time, it won't replace it.
So PARC doesn't cover science?
No. Not yet.
Not yet.
In fact,
but it will. Is that what you're saying? It will?
It may not.
Well, it may, it may not. I mean, there's next generation science standards that are going to come online over the next couple of years that we're in the process of looking at right now and figuring out how we're going to amend our curriculum and bring it up to speed. But currently, PARC just applies to English and mathematics.
And now I heard you say that, yeah, we're going to go to PARC. Wouldn't it be better if we went to PARC when PARC takes place of MCAS than basically having 2 different types of... Remember now, I'm green on this, so...
Well, what will end up happening is PARC will simply replace its equivalent MCAS assessments.
Understand that.
You know, we're going to get good data. It has, or the state has put out how they're going to correlate the data, so we can get growth numbers. We can figure out where our kids are making progress, where they're not making progress with respect to their peers. This assessment is going to come around. I mean, I don't think anybody is under the belief that the Board of Ed isn't going to vote in this new assessment. And if the new assessment is aligned with the new standards, and it's what our teachers and our students are going to be evaluated against, I believe it's in our best interest to get on board early, so that our teachers get experience with assessment before ultimately, we're held accountable to it. The other piece is even with respect to technology. I mean, I'd like to have this coming year in our middle school that we do the computer-based assessment, so that we can ensure the fact that we have the bandwidth, the capacity, and we have some experience in doing this before it becomes a requirement. I would hate for the first time that we do this wholeheartedly with a computer-based assessment model is when we're required to do it. The other thing is if we have issues in administering the computer-based test, I mean, we have the ability to correct them now. And if it affects our scores, it's not going to be held against us because there's a hold harmless clause in choosing to administer PARCC this coming year. And I think that's a real incentive, and I think that's why people are taking this seriously. The easy thing to do in this case would be administer MCAS again. We completely understand what we're doing. It's a paper and pencil test. We don't have to worry about bringing the technology online. It's a really easy solution. But at the same time, I don't believe the easy solution in this case is where we want to be. We need to put in some time and effort now. We need to start adjusting to new assessment, and we need to ensure the fact that we have the technological capabilities of pulling this off. And when we look at where we'd want to administer it, I mean, I think we're going to go in the elementary level, we would do paper and pencil, just like we've done in the past. But the middle school is an ideal test lab for our new tech director and all the technology that we've been putting in place over the last few years, because we have PARCC accountability assessments at every level of that building. So it's a great laboratory to proof out the assessment regime, put in the computer-based model, ensure the fact that we have the capacity to pull it off, that we have the technology in place that's capable of doing it, and can get a solid test run before it counts for real. So I think this is a great opportunity for us, and we should pursue it.
Just my last question. What is PARCC going to give us more than MCAS is going to give us, as far as evaluations are concerned?
Well, it's interesting because there's a performance-based component and there's an end-of-the-year component. So it's what you're capable of doing, and then you can go back and look at what do we know in terms of the content knowledge in the whole course. It's just two different perspectives. In the end, I mean, we're going to go through. We're going to see what it looks like. Right now, even like with the questions, I mean, in administering this test, they're looking at the questions, the quality of the questions, how the students do on them, the data, how the data correlates. I mean, this is a big proving ground for this assessment. You don't just put a new assessment system in place in a year or 2 years and expect the data to be complete and the results to be completely valid. And we are, in fact, participating in that proving ground so that the entire system can be evaluated and adjusted as necessary. It might be the content, it might be the questions, it might be the means at which the assessment's delivered. But this is going to give us a very good idea of what this new generation of assessments looks like. And people, if we want our administrators and our teachers to adjust instruction, they need to see the test, they need to experience the test, they need to know what's expected of them, so that they can in turn make the adjustments either in instructional strategies, pedagogy, content, whatever it might be, to meet the new standards that we're all going to be held accountable to. The other thing for us is if you want good data to make adjustments, you have to kind of take the test out of the test, which means people have to be comfortable with the test, people have to be familiar with the test, people should have practiced the test, experienced the test. So if we're looking for the PARCC data when it fully comes online to have value to our teachers, so they can go back and look at how their kids did, how they did, figure out where they need to modify the curriculum or update their pedagogy or their style of instruction, I think we need to get ahead of the curve and jump right in and participate in this piece.
Sorry, Juice, one last
That's
question.
okay.
Yeah, don't.
He said that twice.
My last question is this. How many cities and towns are interested in, like you, jumping into it, and how many states are interested, like you, in jumping into it? I don't know if you can answer that.
Well, the exact number of states right now, do you remember the exact number of states?
23?
It's about 20.
I don't remember.
It's over. There's different levels
The
of
ones
participation, and there have been.
Down to the county for.
There's a split between this and another assessment system. But in Massachusetts, I've been looking at the debate every day. There's a listserv for assistant superintendents, and they basically let you know what the different votes are and who's choosing to move forward and who's choosing not to move forward. I would say the vast majority of school districts are going to move forward with PARCC. I mean, there are exceptions. And it's a very safe stance to say we're going to do MCAS again, because everybody knows that it's what we've done for a long time.
It has its liabilities too, I guess.
What's that?
MCAS has its liabilities.
Well, MCAS has liabilities, in fact, and you're not going to have the same pool of people to be compared against with MCAS as well that you used to have. And then there's a question of the validity of the MCAS data when you're pulling out huge chunks of the testing pool that are going to be participating in PARCC. I think the vast majority of people, and from what we've seen, most of the school districts are in fact going to go to the PARCC assessment this coming year. And I think for very good reason. It's aside from the fact it's easier to administer MCAS, I don't think there's any other strong, valid arguments against going to the PARCC.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
Thank you. You've actually answered most of my questions, but I'm going to rehash highlights of some of them, only because I really didn't expect to be convinced to go to PARCC. I really had compelling reasons for thinking MCAS was where I needed to stay. But let me start with the one thing that was not answered. You had mentioned something about PARCC having an 11th grade assessment. Yeah. Now, how does that, so we're going to be using, if we vote, and I know you're dividing it into 2 votes, if we in fact vote to include PARCC the junior year, does that then negate the fact that the kids who are sophomores who took a graduation requirement MCAS this year will now have to take something next year? So there's 2 issues to address. As a parent of a sophomore.
Grandchild it in.
Grandchild, I like that.
The PARCC assessment, when we look at grades 3 through 8, it's a PARCC or MCAS question.
Yep.
And then we'll continue to MCAS for English, language, arts, and mathematics, and we'll continue to administer the science test in 5th grade and 8th grade.
Okay.
And that's an MCAS test. In the high school, we're going to administer our MCAS because it's still part of the competency determination, and it will be for the next several years. But we have the option of putting the PARCC in place in 9th grade and 11th grade, and we have a choice of putting it in place in English, language, arts, or mathematics. So we could actually decide to just put the PARCC in 9th grade English and 11th grade math. It's a
tool to help you align your curriculum.
Yeah, you can choose what you want to do at the high school. At the lower levels, it's one or the other. You get a choice. At the high school, we could pick and choose, but if we're doing it, I mean, we should do it. And we should expose as many people as possible to what the new assessments look like. Get as much feedback as possible. To help our teachers understand, what this new assessment regime is going to look like. And we piloted the high school with computer-based last year, and with the new tech director he's phenomenal. He and his team were with everybody. They answered all the questions. They worked out all the glitches. I thought it was a very successful first run. I'd like to see them replicated again at the high school. And what would happen is we did targeted classrooms last year. This would be full scale. So we're up in the scale of the assessment, and it lets us know. It gives us a very good idea of whether we have the technological capacity in place to do it, or what do we need to add to it in order to fully pull it off. I mean, we're going to have more technology when this comes online, but what actually does it need to look like? This is a great place to figure that out. And it's the same thing with the middle school. You have a great cluster. Everybody's testing in ELA and math at all the grade levels of middle school. So you'd be bringing 300 kids online for each assessment at once. It's a nice way to tax the system and see what we can do, even from the capacity of the technology to just what it looks like in terms of scheduling, to bring enough technology to bear at one time to accomplish a task. And it's easy enough to work these things out on paper and say, we're fine, we're good.
Yeah.
We have the bandwidth, we have the number of machines, but actually doing it,
it's totally different.
You find out whether you can really pull it off, and you figure out all the glitches going to be. The last thing in the world I would want to do is walk into the first PARCC assessment without ever having done it, or without ever fully taxed either our system or our administrators' capacity to go ahead and fully integrate the technology with the assessment.
I understand. I think I've used up my questions. Go ahead.
Well, that was
we'll come back to
one of my selling points. I'm actually looking up an email. Did you see the comments from Glenn Kuchar today online on MCAS? On the technology aspect of it?
It wasn't too good on my email today.
Oh, well,
I just saw the legal bills, then that took the rest of my day.
I do like the idea that it is a hold harmless situation, and that it does give us a chance to work out the glitches technology-wise, because and I just called up his email and his concern when he posted on the board had to do a lot more with the complexities of the end users and the teachers who have to deal with the technology, and how we all have these frustrations of when something doesn't work with FedEx or your airline or whatever, and you're trying to book, and that to work through it in the moment under a high stakes test, you know, is frustrating, and the balance is, you know, will we be working these things out, or are we going to be the guinea pigs who are working them out? And he was leaning heavily towards MCAS for that reason. I know that the number of schools that were on the MCAS list, and it was pretty split in Massachusetts, were those schools who had technology concerns, who didn't have the infrastructure, and likewise. So
I thought you could also do it on a paper.
For 2 years.
Paper version.
In fact, that's what we would recommend for the elementary schools. There's a ratio of technology that you should have in place, given the size of the cohort that's going to be testing at once. And last year, when we were selected for testing, you know, they asked us to do paper and pencil at the elementary, paper and pencil at the middle school, and computer-based at the high school. And I believe that was done based on them looking at what we had submitted for our technological capacity and doing a ratio. And this coming year, I believe, you know, it wouldn't be in our best interest to ask computer-based at elementary, because we have one functional lab in each one of the elementary schools. And if you look at any one of the cohorts going through, that might be a 50% ratio, which I think technically would qualify us, but I don't think it's an ideal scenario. Whereas the middle school, we have more labs available, more laptop carts available, so we could bring enough machines online at any one time to do the testing. The high school, you know, we have a lot of labs here, because we have things like the language labs in addition to the computer labs. And we have some carts as well. But I think we want to really tax ourselves with that challenge. You know, when you look at another piece of it is when you look at the training that Pearson puts out in order to implement the computer-based assessment. You know, it's a full day of a webinar, you know, where somebody's talking at you, and then there's an unbelievable amount of information they throw at you. Unlike MCAS, where you get a book that you can read in about an hour, you know, that's including taking notes, going through the whole thing, and answering all your own questions. You know, what Pearson puts out, or what Park puts out with respect to testing is, it's this huge piece that you have to distill down to what you really need to do. It shouldn't be as complicated as it is, but it is. And I would much rather we figure it out now than we figure it out when it counts, because there's no guarantee that they're going to simplify their process for letting us know how to do the testing. And there's nothing better than experience. You know, we can run through the whole thing, and we can generate our own set of procedures for doing this to prepare people to do it. You know, and our own question and answer piece, FAQ piece, whatever goes with it.
I got a couple of short questions in the first pass. So this year we did both as a pilot basis on certain classes. What was the experience this year?
Overall, I think it was a really positive experience. I had no complaints.
Did we get the results?
We haven't seen them yet, but we did do a significant briefing at the high school where we did the computer-based piece, and overall it went remarkably well. And I'm going to contribute directly to a lot of preparation in our new tech director, who was right there on site with his whole team, and they just worked through everything with the teachers that were administering the test. We also targeted people that were very tech savvy to have their classes take the test, which helps. You know, you've got to be smart about who you pick to pilot things. But overall, I think it was a very good experience. I mean, we'll see what the data looks like when it comes out, but.
So your recommendation at this stage is to, in the areas that Park exists, abandon MCAS, go only to Park?
It would be my recommendation that in grades 3 through 8, where we have to make a decision of MCAS or Park, that we move to Park.
Question.
And I have, let me finish my 2, and then I'll turn to this side.
Well, I never finished my, I really only had one. No, I really only had one more question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Great, now I'm blanking.
We'll come back to you.
Go ahead. No, seriously, go ahead then. Go ahead.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
So mine was really simple questions. I was concerned about what Ms. Hussaini said. Massachusetts Association of School Committees executive director is recommending to wait.
It actually wasn't a formal recommendation, but it was more he was putting out his fears on the tech, and it was just purely on the technology side.
The only problem is technology.
So maybe, we have the option. The board has the option of saying, let's look at it next year. maybe get the data from this year's
Oh, you don't
experience?
get to,
No, what ends up happening is, I mean, we get to vote yes or no right now, and that locks us in for the assessment of our choice. Then
it
a
locks
window,
you in for 2 years, do I recall? There's no out once you're in.
Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
But the other thing is a window opens where we can request to move over to the Park Assessment One. And if we don't do anything by default, we stay with MCAS. The major issues, and I didn't see that particular correspondence, but the ones that I've seen going back and forth, in really what I've heard from talking to some of my peers where they voted not to do it, it was technology based. And do you have the capacity? The thing about our district, and when you look at implementing the park, the recommendation, I mean, we need a recommendation to do it or not do it. But how we would probably do it, and everything is subject to change, and I know our tech director said we can do it everywhere. You know, he's a very positive, let's get it done guy. But I think what we would look at doing is paper and pencil at the elementary level, which means we don't have any issues related to technology. It's a test just like any other test the kids are used to taking. And we would look at the middle school as the proving ground where we have more technology in place, and we have a capacity to put a full cohort of kids through at once, that we look at that as the proving grounds for implementing large-scale park assessment and work on all the bugs. The high school, where we did, and I think this would be a separate vote what we're going to do at the high school, but I would recommend we do park there as well. We take what we learned last year, we ramp it up to full scale, so once again, we fully tax our system. We, our administrators, look at the planning aspect of park, which is twice the assessment of MCAS. And we ensure the fact that we have the technology and expertise in place to pull this off before the scores count for us. And you know, we don't have to deal with the majority of the issues that the different organizations have expressed that aren't necessarily about the assessment, but about a district's capacity to implement the assessment using technology and the computer-based assessment systems.
And in the workshop that I went to, this Mr. Bickerton and Ms. LaCroix came, and if I remember correctly, they were saying that you know, you really need regular computers. It's there are some at that time there were some quirks with using the tablets. Right. So do we have all the equipment?
If we were going to do it, I mean, they've identified the platforms that work remarkably well. We would ensure the fact that we were using a platform identified by the state and by Park as being optimal for this particular assessment.
Okay, the last question I have is, now we are on a certain level 3 status, so if we move to this, will that disappear or will that go away?
There's a hold harmless clause, and what that means is we can only improve. So the level 3 status that you're talking about is independent of this particular vote because it's based on the MCAS that we just took.
So that will disappear on Park? They have different levels on Park?
Well, in looking at the particular issue that we had, that issue no longer exists. So what is probably going to happen is the building which we have, which is level 3, is going to come back to level 2. Right? Because the subgroup that resulted in...
The question is, will the Park let us come back to level 2?
Yeah, and what ends up happening is you cannot lose a level with the Park assessment. You can either maintain your level or you can come up a level. So ideally what we're looking at, you know, we're level 3 right now. I don't anticipate us being level 3 next year. I anticipate us being a level 2 school district with level 2 and level 1 school, and potentially level 1 schools. What would end up happening is if we move to this assessment for next year, Park, we could not fall to level 3 no matter what we do at the elementary or middle schools. Because the assessment that we're using cannot, when the results come out, we cannot lose a level. That's what the hold harmless, that's the incentive. That's the incentive the state gives the school districts for implementing this. That's like the hook. You know, there's no way that if you choose to do this for us, we are going to come back around and hold you accountable if there's any fluctuation in your student.
After everybody moves to Park, there will still be 5 levels. They are there to stay?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Well, they're all part of the waiver that we get from the federal government. But in that, Massachusetts, I think, is ahead of the curve in pursuing all the components that are necessary to maintain the waiver. I can't foresee that going anywhere, and yes, in fact, those 5 levels of accountability remain in place.
I will ask Ms. Husseini if she remembers.
I did. I wrote it
questions.
down too.
Okay.
It had to do with the district determined measures and how MCAS was built into the framework to accomplish certain things for those district determined measures, which are moving forward, right? And now we're looking at park. Are there an equivalent number of park components at the same grade levels to cover?
Park will cover more.
Will cover more.
Yes.
Which is, so it's a bonus.
Yeah, Park will provide a 9th grade assessment.
Okay.
Well, as things are framed right now, that would be, that you could use the student growth data because there wouldn't be a break from 8th grade to 10th grade. The 11th grade data, you would still have the 10th grade break once Park is fully aligned, but it would give you an additional grade level of mandated assessments, and that would be in fact required.
Because otherwise, I think from a district-determined measures standpoint, starting Park now is advantageous as we're starting the evaluation system to work out those kinks instead of having to switch midstream and count on the transition of data. It's just I was concerned more about the alignment of the elements with the elements in the...
Yeah, and one of the things that was required of the district in terms of implementing a new assessment is, and it was something that we bargained to 3 years, you have to have an assessment in place for 3 years in order for it to be valid as a district determined measure. The state doesn't play by the same rules we do. So even in this correlation, there's not going to be a 3-year or 2-year requirement of assessment data under Park in order for it to qualify as a DDM.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Brown.
Sure, I just have one question. I administered the park in MCAS this year myself. And I've seen all the benefits that he's talking about. The only drawback I saw was the technology. And if he has an IT system department in place, there should be no problems.
No other questions?
I do.
Oh, Mr. Soares.
Something you said really bothered me. And what bothered me was that once you make some level, and you said something about we're down to level 3, but if we go to this
park,
we can't go below level 3, okay? Or we can't, once we reach the next level, we stay there, we can never go back?
No, what I was saying is there's a hold harmless clause to this testing. And it's an incentive from the state to move on. The state wants you to do Park.
Of course they do.
They want it. They got to get more people involved. It allows the trials and all the implementation piece to be fine-tuned. It gives you better data. They want us to do this. And what they're saying is if you do it, what we're not going to do is take a new assessment where we're still working out the kinks of the assessment, we're working out the kinks of what the questions are, what's valid, what's not valid. And what we're not going to do is then come around and because you had a fluctuating in your test data, ding your school district or a school and knock it down to level 3. So what they're saying is whatever your rating is going into this assessment, and our rating for next year will be based on the MCAS that we just took, all right, which is independent of this decision. What we're not going to do is get knocked down a level because we had an issue associated with the Park testing. So as a school district, say that next year, or say that based on our current MCAS scores, we come back and we have 6 level 2 schools and a level 1 school. Okay, when we administer the Park, we're not going to. None of those schools are going to lose a level, right? So they're going to be held at that level for this while we're piloting this Park piece.
Okay.
Right. Now they can go up a level. Right. So if the school is implementing something spectacular and we have the new curriculum coming online and they got a new principal and the teachers are fired up and they did a remarkable professional development and they did a ton of intervention for their kids and they had this profound impact on their building, that's going to be recognized and the level of that school can go up. But at the same time, if we have issues related, like say at the middle school, we have a technological issue and it affects the kids taking the test, so a 2-hour test takes 4 hours. Those are not going to be the same test scores as you would have had without any glitches. All right, we're not going to be held accountable to those scores, so that middle school would potentially drop a level.
But we will be held accountable the year after.
Once this whole thing's online and Park's approved, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's in the data. I mean, we'll see what the data looks like, but there'll be some. I mean, we'll be able to use the data for looking at our instruction, but the data will get better over time because even testing the questions, they look at how kids do on the questions, determine how difficult they are. They look at the ratio of more difficult questions to potentially questions kids do better on to try to differentiate between kids. They go back and look at how valid is this question for determining what we want to determine from the students. And right now, by participating in Park, we're helping them get that data, so that when the assessment comes online, and it is something where you're gonna judge how well your school district is doing or a parent can judge how well their kids are doing, or a principal can look at how well his teacher's doing. You know, the assessment is in fact valid. All the questions have been proved out. They've been correlated with the content they're supposed to cover, and there's the right ratio of questions on a given assessment to differentiate between a student that's doing, that's achieving at a higher level to a student that potentially, you know, has got some work to do. So
just to recap, if we vote no now for the reasons of Massachusetts ironing out their problems, make it more streamlined, then we'll have to wait 2 years.
Well, I don't know what would happen next year. I don't know whether there'd be another decision to make, or I can only tell you what the timeline is right now, and there's a deadline of June 30th to make a decision to guarantee the fact that we can move the park, or there's a window afterwards where we could make another decision if we choose not to at this point. But there's no guarantee that we would enter that testing piece. And then if we just let it go, we're in MCAS, which
doesn't give you the...
I need to ask one more question.
Sure.
What do we learn from MCAS?
What do we learn from MCAS?
Yes, what we have been learning from MCAS, giving all of the tests and giving all of the data, and supposedly, I know that MCAS was supposed to be that the whole United States took MCAS, and if someone moved from Texas to here, they wouldn't lose a thing as far as knowledge is concerned, because everybody learned MCAS, and supposedly we're all at the same level across the United States. Maybe my evaluation is wrong, but that's what I thought.
Well, I think what you're talking about is the Common Core. That's the idea behind the Common Core. MCAS is a Massachusetts-specific piece, just like Regents is a New York-specific assessment piece. But what MCAS allows you to do, it allows you to gauge how your students are doing against other students, how your school district is doing against other school districts. But the most important piece for us as a school district, it allows us to reflect on how well we're doing implementing the curriculum, and to target kids for intervention if kids aren't making the same progress with their peers.
I'm making the what?
Progress.
So I didn't hear the word progress.
And like if you looked at our last, our 3-year district improvement plan, I mean, almost the entire plan is consumed with identifying and providing resources to kids that are struggling. And what MCAS is, that's the principal assessment that we use to go back and look at, because there's the numbers that you get for MCAS. And there's a lot of arguments about MCAS, a lot of things, but generally the more kids that you have in the testing pool, the more valid your results are. So when you look at MCAS, you know, your testing pool across the state is tens of thousands of kids. So ideally you're getting a fairly valid assessment of how your kids are doing. Now when we go back and we look at the data like across a grade level, we'll throw up our data on every specific topic or question against what the state averages were. And what you can do is you can look in some areas you did great, in some areas you didn't do as well. So as in an aggregate, we can then go back and look at, you know, if we didn't do well in this question, is it because, you know, we have a gap in our curriculum, or we didn't cover a specific kind of material? Or is it related back to something else? And I can tell you some years, you know, we had, you know, 3 teachers, like in the middle school, all teaching the same content level out on maternity leave. And, you know, that affected our testing data that year. You know, so the content was there, you know, the curriculum was there, but, you know, we have a dip. Is that something that we're going to adjust our curriculum on, or we're going to put in an intervention program? Probably not. But at the same time, if everything's the way it's supposed to be and we see a gap on an assessment question, and generally if it's a gap on the same area in a couple different parts of the assessment, you know, we need to go back and look at, you know, what's the curriculum look like? Are we covering this? And then, you know, what ends up happening is we have, for instance, Linda Feeney, who can go, she's our curriculum behavior and data specialist from the West. She can go and sit down with a grade level and look at the whole assessment, you know, what the expectations are, how you did on it. Then you can go back and review all of your curriculum to see what you're doing, what you're teaching, how you're teaching it, so that you can make the adjustments necessary that we're fully conveying the Common Core to our kids, and we're meeting our educational objectives. So, I mean, assessment data is great. The MCAS is one piece. We have a lot of other pieces that we utilize, and we're working on developing more all the time, so we have a seamless continuum of assessments, so we can target kids for help or identify what we need to improve all the time.
So we have to vote by June 30th, so the board can make a motion to accept the transition to change. They can vote to not accept it, or wait to the next meeting to act on it. So do we have a motion?
Go through the, so our first motion would be for grades
It can be
3 to 8.
It can either be one. We want to go with Park, where it's available, or we could differentiate between the middle school and the high school. But I think available would be going with Park where it's available.
And that is your recommendation?
That would strongly be my recommendation.
I'm willing to make the motion to move to Park where it is available.
Any seconds?
Second it. I've administered myself.
Debate time?
Yes, go ahead.
I really don't have any debate. I'm done.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so it's unanimous.
No, I oppose.
Oh, you oppose?
I opposed, yeah.
Okay. So it's 4-1. I just have a 2-minute recess, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, it's, you know, yeah.
Well, it's...
We are back on.
Are you convinced?
I'm convinced.
There's good arguments on both sides.
I believe the next item is superintendent's goals.
I thought it was administration duty to inform school committee with accurate, complete information.
Oh, we have another one?
Missed 13.
Yeah, that one I put in there because you know, we get. I don't feel that we get fully informed with all the issues. We get sometimes differing
opinions,
pieces of information, like the ULPs, for example. Dr. Rizzi told me that they were kept in Jeannie Tate's office. We don't have them. And I asked Jeannie Tate, she says she faxes everything in there.
Dr. Earl, I've read that email, and what I heard them say is that Jeannie Tate kept the calendar of events and appointments that regarded the ULPs, not necessarily the copies of the ULPs themselves.
It says notices of all matters at the DLR are faxed to the main office for the school committee as soon as they have been scheduled. So what I like to do is, just get you know, more information about the things that are happening and complete information. Even, I mean, I love a lot of emails. So
can I ask? I've had an objection to this agenda item since you've been putting it on for weeks. Can I ask that agenda items state something that isn't so subjective? That if in fact you feel that you're not getting a specific piece of information and you want to discuss it, but it is in fact your duty as chair to have the conversations. And twice on this agenda already, I heard Dr. Rizzi say she didn't know why something was on the agenda. As a chair, those were conversations I had earlier in the week before the agenda was put together and released. And it bothers me on the other side as well that this communication isn't happening. So I'm just asking that the agenda stick to items that are something that pertain to school committee business, that either require a discussion or a vote, but that are not vague, or something that we can have some backup information for.
The open meeting law requires the chair to list all items that he or she reasonably expects to discuss. So if you make it too specific, then you know, you may not be able to go to the other topics. I also disagree with you. This is, I mean, administration's duty to fully inform the school committee is very objective.
But accurate and complete, I think, are just pejorative terms. And who's?
That's the.
I voiced my objection. That is all.
Thank you. Noted. The other one was we found out that Mr. Ford went to Department of Labor Relations hearing and prepared some kind of statement on behalf of the school committee. And was it a defending memorandum? And have made an offer. It was a unilateral settlement agreement, and notice the employees. It said the school committee signature was signed by Mr. Ford. So again, we work as a team. If there is a need to do that, just keep the school committee informed.
I will make a comment on that.
Okay.
I would also like to comment on the agenda item, which I actually think is I don't agree with this being an agenda item. I agree that it is a statement. It is a statement that is, in fact, in and of itself inaccurate, and an implication which is inaccurate. So, that's you will continue to do as you wish, but I feel that it's important that I put that on the record. The staff, myself and Mr. Ford, along with the attorney for the district, always, since before me, during the 7 years that I've been here, certainly during the years of my predecessors, it is the staff that goes with the attorney to the Labor Relations Board and defends against the complaints. And that has always been the case. And until you change your mind, and it would be a departure, certainly a departure from practice and process, if the school committee wishes to send people instead to the Department of Labor Relations, instead of sending the staff, that would be a change, and it's certainly a change that you're welcome to do, and it would save us a great deal of time. But we always discuss the ULPs in executive session, and a position on the ULPs is taken by the committee. In the case of the ones that we're dealing with now or have recently dealt with, that position was taken long before the dates were actually set. And then when it came to actually going to the DLR to defend against the ULPs, there was no attorney. So in lieu of the attorney and the staff, we had no one but the staff. And they are extremely strict about giving any kind of extensions. I was able to get an extension on the one related to the school committee allowing the STA to speak. So that is a conversation that you could have in executive session and potentially change the position of the board as far as how you would like to respond to that in hearing, and there is an attorney now. So if Mr. Ford or I had not gone, then there would have been no representation and there would have been default. And it is in fact our job to go. If this is something to which you object and you would like to take the time off from your day to go with the attorneys or in lieu of the attorney, send a school committee member instead, then that is something that I need to hear from the board is going to be your process going forward. And because of all of the paperwork generated around ULPs, it is the custom of the attorney's office to maintain the calendar, keep the paperwork, and be responsible for the written responses that have to go when such a thing is in process. It is not something that happens in my office because it's not something that either Mary or I or Mr. Ford do. In the absence of an attorney, the gentleman took it on. This was above and beyond, but it was because there was no attorney, not because the alternative would be for the school committee to take on this job. So we will either continue to do our job in this regard, as has been our custom and is practice, or you will give us strict instructions that from now on the school committee will represent itself at the Department of Labor Relations.
Wait a minute. I don't think your characterization is correct. I'm not saying that this administration should not go to the hearings. The issue is the position that was given, like the saying that the continue with 7-period class schedule and not implement an 8-period class schedule. That was never discussed in the school committee meeting, and that was never authorized. So what I'm saying is,
it was.
I'm saying that it should be. If you have to do something on an emergency basis, just call or send an email to people so that they know. We work as a team, and we should be informed. So this is all to do with the informing the school committee.
Again, I will say that is inaccurate information. The school committee in executive sessions has discussed the ULPs on a number of occasions, And it was decided during the course of negotiations that the 8-period day would be negotiated as part of the main contract. As such, that statement was already made at negotiations, and it was the position that the school committee was taking for a period of many months. And this ULP came along earlier in the process, but by the time it got to the hearing stage, it had already been decided months ago. So this was only memorializing in writing what had been decided as the bargaining position and agreed to by the attorney during the course of bargaining the 8-period day as a piece of the entire contract.
So, and your other statement is administration's duty to inform school committee with accurate and complete information. You said you disagree with that. So you're saying administration does not have a duty to inform school committee with accurate and complete information?
I most certainly am not, and it's surprising to me that you would hear that. But what I'm saying is it is, in my view, not an appropriate agenda item, and it is disparaging. And in fact, the information that the administration produces in every case and for any board and whenever for any issue is as accurate and complete as it can be at that time, which is not to say that we wouldn't occasionally make a mistake, but the implication in the agenda item is one to which I object for my own part and for that of my administration and my administrative team.
Mr. Soares, did you have a comment?
What's ULP?
Unfair labor practice.
Okay, I don't see any more.
Yeah, an acronym's jumped in. We've been pretty good though, don't you think?
Excellent, excellent.
So we move to agenda item 14. The superintendent has prepared some proposed goals, and there is. So what I like to do is turn it over to Dr. Rizzi and ask her to explain the goals and why she chose them, and what is the how are we going to measure those? Anything she wishes to speak.
There are 4 standards, and it was agreed in the process, and it is also, I believe, what we're doing with other educators in the system. Each of the standards has a number of different indicators. I picked an indicator for each standard that I thought was in line with the goals and what you have expressed to me individually and as a group and over time about the things that are important to you. In all the material that you have related to this, which has been handed out on a number of occasions, and I'm sure you all have, you have a sheet that indicates all of the possible indicators to go with the standards. So if you wanted to talk about perhaps switching out one of these standards, one of the indicators, and there were ones that you want to discuss as an alternative to the one that I've chosen, that's certainly a conversation we can have. The goals are fairly specific, how they have to be designed, and there's a professional practice goal. So we'll just go over what we have here, and there's one of those. There's a student learning goal, and then there are district improvement goals, of which there are 3, and those need to be linked to the plans for improvement. So you'll see a lot that you've already seen in the 3-year and annual action plans. But the professional practice goal, and this comes from a number of conversations with you and with other people that I've had over time, and it's related to my spending more time with the school councils and the PTOs as well, but particularly with school councils, talking about the 3-year plan and the various things that we have in place to improve the district, and get input on some of those things. And also is a proposal for starting a district-wide school council, which isn't something that we have at the present moment. But I think it would give people another forum to have input at a different level of the planning, and give people who are interested in having that input a regular place where I could personally have those conversations with them. So I have built that in as part of the goal. We're all required to have a student learning goal. Dr. Brown has been living, breathing, sleeping, and eating this process of evaluation in her own district.
Yes, Mom.
So none of this is news to you, but for some of you folks who don't deal with this all the time, it could be. We have put a lot of things in place, as Mr. Ford spoke before, related to remediation and enrichment, extending the programs that we offer before and after the school day. And we have some very high expectations for those programs. And we believe that students getting extra time in the areas in which they struggle and in the areas in which they excel will be to their benefit in the long term, in the short term, and will impact positively the achievement that we will see from pre-K all the way through high school. That is a very educated guess and reasonable to assume based on research and experience. However, because it's very important that everything we do is measurable, and we've had these programs now, this is the second year, and we're asking for additional money in the budget for next year to increase them even further, that the student learning goal be to put a system in place by which we can evaluate in an objective way the effectiveness of these programs. And that way we can tweak them faster and address any issues if we're not seeing that we're getting essentially the bang for the buck out of them that we had hoped to get. So you need a way to judge if what you believe should be working is working, and that would be the purpose of this goal. And the action steps underneath the goal, you can see that those are the ways that you'll be able to tell as these things progress through the cycle. Goal 3 is related to the district improvement plan. And as you've seen in the plan, it is to further the extended school day policy. You've already passed a policy, or are we still in the process? Yeah. To move this forward, getting the policy in place was a goal for this year so that we can go forward with the extended school day program next year. And then goal 4, and this is also related to the district improvement plan, is to extend the enrichment program, which is started in a modular form, but we would like to expand it, so we have a very specific plan as to how to go about expanding that to all the elementary schools, and that is the hope this year that we'll be able to get to that level. And we will develop extended school day programs for elementary students. And then as the years go on, we will expand them as we've been doing with all of our programs to start small, get them up and running, and then increase the budget slowly and incrementally over time to add more students until we reach the capacity that we think is the capacity that we need. And as you know, in the FY15 budget, there are late buses proposed to remove the barrier of transportation because we were able to pilot with children whose families could provide their transportation, but we certainly don't want to exclude students who would need the bus to do that. So we have a pretty comprehensive program to put in late buses for all of the schools for next year so that that will not be an issue in any of our schools. People who want to use those programs, and we are aggressively trying to get people to incorporate that into their culture and their daily thinking, that those programs are available for their students and important.
So these are after-school buses?
Yes, ma'am. So this is, the whole program of goals is set up in the format that has been approved, indeed mandated by the state for evaluation for all educators, and in line with the plan that we voted for this evaluation cycle.
Okay.
Looks good.
So so the goal setting for the superintendent is probably one of the most important roles and responsibilities of the school committee. So I thank Dr. Rizzi for preparing this draft. What I envision is get some comments from the members and not necessarily vote on this now, but start the conversation of if there are any other things we need to consider, or how we are going to measure these goals. So do we have any, I open it to discussion
I'll
of the
start.
board.
I'll start.
Dr. Brown.
Sure. So as far as measuring her goals, she has timelines on all of these. At the end, you look at, they'll say the action, at the action steps, and she goes to the end where it says timelines. The timelines is how you measure them. If they're done by the specific time, that means the goal has been met. If it hasn't been done, then it's not met. So this is the way we're going to measure what her goals are. She already, it's explicit. It's within her action steps. So she states her goal. She states her goal. She states what she's going to do. She does a SMART goal. Then she gets the action steps and the time increments that we look for to make sure that she's substantiated these goals and she has everything here. So we just have to basically look at the time increments to determine if she has in fact completed her goals. And everything is written out here for us as a complete package.
I know what I didn't say, but I would like to say is for those of you who came in to have individual discussions about it, it was certainly very informative. And so that contributed to some of the things,
I can see some about wording in here.
Particularly for the professional practice goal, which is certainly something that I got a lot of feedback from people that was important to them.
I have a question on that. You have on here the school councils.
Yes.
Do you intend to go to PTO, PTA meetings as well?
Yes.
You didn't put them in there, but I just...
yes.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
So you want to say school council and PTO meetings, or school council or PTO meetings?
Can I?
Well, she said yes.
No,
I'm
just saying
trying
because the school council is more of like a high school, so I was just seeing if she was going to be going to like elementary as well.
I would put that more under, if you look under the standards professional culture, I added communications. So evidence of attending PTO meetings and other school functions would fall under that indicator of communications.
Oh, okay.
I also just want to, for the newer members who may not be aware, school councils exist by law with a very specific function at all schools, and that is, in fact, to help formulate the school improvement plans and everything. So I think it's really important to hear that's the professional goal. And the PTO thing, while it's nice, is not necessarily the same. That's a good community relation
Well, that's
outreach,
that was what we spoke about.
and
so
that's-
that's important to me that
no, I agree.
So I would look to provide evidence under standard 4 communications of attending meetings like that and other school functions as well.
Excuse me,
And I
Bob.
will do that.
Thank you.
Did you make up one of these last year?
Did I make up a set of goals?
Like this last year?
Yes.
Can I see a copy of that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I personally, I need more time with this. Some could be obvious reasons, some could be unobvious reasons, but I need a little more time with this.
Sure. And I'm happy to meet with you and talk to you about it between now and the next meeting, if you would like.
Yes, I would like
As
that
part of
very
your
much.
thinking about it.
Yes. Mainly because we have not met yet, so that would be a good idea to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think she has it all in line as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts states she should has it. She's done what she's supposed to do in reference to this evaluation. We just have to make sure, as far as your measuring that you want to look at, just be aware of the timelines to, if you want to measure it, to make sure that she's fulfilling it within a period of time.
The measurement would not just be the timelines, but whatever the item is. Like if you do part of it, or how much you do it, or how thorough
Based on
you
the
do it.
timelines, yeah.
So it has nothing to. The timeline is one component; it's a separate component. But the action steps, when we set goals in the industry, you say if you do this, you get a A or whatever the rating is. If you do not the whole thing, but part of it, you do you get a B. So that kind of
So my
thing. But
question, Dr. Erdo, I have a question. So are we going to be going into her office to see that she's doing these things, or how? I'm
No,
just
that
trying to see
would
how you're
be-
going to measure it outside.
So
of
that's exactly the question. How are we going to measure it?
All right.
So we are not going to go into her office. She'll be reporting to us before the election next year, and then we'll do the evaluation. I had a few suggestions, different.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Now, you said she's not going to get back to us until the elections of next year, but there are certain time limits here that says this is on the first page, because nobody told me what page they were on. So on the first page on the back, okay, it says September 2014 through December 2014. And that's the attend school council meeting each school in the district. Okay. That sounds pretty easy. Conduct a district-wide school council meeting. I'm not sure what that means. Conduct a district school-wide council meeting.
Well, that we do not at the present time. We have school councils, which are mandated by law, and they have a certain function in every school. It's related to the school-based management portion of education reform. We do not have a district-wide council, but it is a large district, and so I would like to start one. So I can't conduct the meeting until I start the committee.
You also have to have some elections, some procedure for elections, because school councils, the law tells you how to form the school council.
But this will be different because it's not actually mandated by law.
Yes.
I just would like us to have one.
He's doing above and beyond, Dr.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that says December 2014 through January 2015. So I would assume that somewhere along the line, once you get this district, etc., you would be coming back and telling us that one's done, check, that one.
Well, the evaluation process has a built-in formative, which is a kind of a midpoint, looking at how things are going, and then a final summative portion. So for the mid-cycle, I would report on those things if it isn't appropriate to add them to the agenda, to report on them because there's something meaningful to say that is not at either one of those particular times.
I'm sorry, I lost you completely. Help me out.
So the cycle has built in a formative, which is kind of like a mid-cycle check-in.
Right, and I heard you
And
say
at that point in time, then I would report on how things were going.
Okay,
right.
And when would that be?
Well, that would be a date that we would have to set based
I
on the
thought
length of
dates
the
were-
cycle.
All right, I'm sorry. So, conduct a district-wide school council meeting. Then this would be superintendent and school council, which you're going to put together.
Right.
Then it says the timeline, December 2014, January 2015. So I would assume that you would at least get us in January of 2015 and say that's completed? Am I reading this correctly? or-
May I add, what the school committee has to do is pick a midpoint evaluation. And if we say it is, in fact, December 1st, she will give us a summary of all that has been accomplished through December 1st. Now, for those items that are still after that, we will either get updates through regular school committee meetings, or we will wait till the end of the cycle evaluation to get the full report. But when she's talking about a midpoint evaluation, that is a date we need to pick, at
Okay.
which point we will ask her for a report of, to date, all that's been accomplished.
Excellent.
Mrs. Soers, remember that little paper she gave us with the circle on it? It had the little boxes in the circles.
Describe the process.
It described the process. So what happens is that half point is a formative assessment that we have to show. We'll have a conversation about it once we pick a date, and then in the finality of it, to conclude these dates, it'll be a summative, and then we'll do the final.
Okay.
So on that little piece of paper she gave us with the circle on it.
Thank you.
Okay. I just had a few suggestions, different topics for goals. So I'd like to give them to you, and then maybe I'll come with Joe. We can talk more in detail. One is it would be really nice to have goals, like developing a good relationship with the employees. The other one is, the school committee and the administration have been criticized in the past for, the transparency issue. So what can we do, coming up with a plan, how we can at least look more transparent. So that could be like doing some like e-library of documents. It could be regular reports on student achievement, improving financial reports. And then the last one is coming up with a feasibility study, not doing it, but how we can do it and what's the impact of making the West School a regular school. Right now, it's like a specialty school for ELL students. We have all the resources there, and we have the Title I money coming there. And as a result, that school is not performing on par, according to MCAS results, with the rest of our schools. So it could be like a report saying that, these are the benefits, these are the drawbacks, and, whether, your recommendation to keep it the same or change it to regular school, or, and then if we change it, what would be the cost? That kind of thing. So, those are the ideas that maybe we can discuss, turn it into goals.
I'd like to add, can I add one more to that? Would be the monthly budget thing that you're supposed to be doing. Maybe not you, but who you have doing it.
Could you speak up? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. The monthly report that you give us every month about where we are versus budget. Now, I got the last one, and I really couldn't interpret it that well. So for me, it would help to be able to interpret that better. So if we can make that out of a goal or something like that, that would be nice too.
I'm happy to meet with you and go over again the keys that Maria prepared, so that it's to help you with understanding that particular report. You can certainly do that. I don't see that needs to be a goal, but I know she prepared keys for what the accounts mean and what the numbers are and how they line up with the budget and all those things. I don't think that we actually spent enough time on that to go over it in a comprehensive way, and I'm happy to go over that with you again.
Any other discussion on the goals?
No, I had a very productive meeting with Dr. Rizzi ahead of the goal setting.
Okay.
Dr. Earl, do you take comments from the public on an amendment?
No.
On a item?
No.
Okay.
I will say, although it's not related to the goals, the West School is not a special school.
I was going to ask that question.
It is one of our 5 elementary schools. It is a level 2 school now, so it's definitely not in the right direction. It's a level 2 school, which is what we want all of our schools to be, if not level 1. That's the expectation. There are some students who go there for ELL services. It is not an ELL school. And in defense of those students, the ELL students who are learning to speak English are not a reason that the school is poor or not performing or any of those things. And I think it's really important that the public understand that there's nothing wrong with the West School and that there is no achievement issue with the students who are learning to speak English.
As a matter of fact, the scores of the ELL scores have
level
been
2 school.
exemplary.
It bothers me, like our rest of our schools are about 50% or better, 50 percentile or better, whereas the West School is 15%, bottom 15%.
No,
so what we need to do is come up with a plan how we can make it comparable to other schools.
And again, this is something I feel it needs to be said, and Mr. Ford really wants to say it.
Okay.
You cannot be a level 2 school and be in the bottom 15%. That is an erroneous statement. Go on.
Dr. I just want to say that you just said that they're the 15th percentile. We've talked about this. I can't tell you how many times they are not in the 15th percentile. If they were, they would be level 3. We've talked about this in public, and we've talked about it outside of this room. That school is not a level 3 school, it's a level 2 school, you quoted a fact that you've been corrected on numerous times, and I asked that please in the future, if we're going to reference the performance data in the school, we accurately reference it.
Right, so the way, well, I'll qualify that. Superintendent recommended to me in the past that she looks at schooldigger.com for the digested MCAS data. And if you go look at the schooldigger.com, it is at the bottom 15%.
Well, it isn't, and the DESE is
But
the
you are saying is that
definitive
according to DESE, it's bottom 23%. So either way, it should be better. It should be about 50%.
all be better. That's
no, but that's the idea. Why should one of our schools be underperforming compared to the other schools?
Dr. Earl, if you want to talk about a school where we have a significant number of students that are learning to speak English, in addition to do all their academic coursework, and if you compare that school to other schools that have similar populations, you know, it's not this school where kids aren't getting a good education. You know, if you look at the growth of students in that school, in particular the students that are learning English, they far exceed the state averages. Kids get a great education in that school. If I were a parent, I would be proud to send my child there. It's this continued perception piece where that school isn't providing kids with a great education, and they're receiving a great education. In fact, the kids at that building have more opportunities during the summer, extended school hours, it'll be over vacations next year. I mean, it's a school, it's a positive school. If you've been in the school, I walk around the school, I meet with parents in the school, I'm there all the time. It's a great place to send your kids. And this continued characterization of that school as if it's a failing school is grossly inaccurate and does a disservice to every family that sends their kid there and to the Stoughton Public Schools in general.
Well,
it's a great.
Can I
wait a minute. Let me finish. You actually made my point for me. The you know, the kids are doing well. But if they were, and then you told me in the past that you know, parents are encouraged to send, like if it's a ELL parent, other part of the Stoughton area, they are encouraged to send their kid to West School because
that's not actually accurate either, Dr.
Well, that's what you told me.
Dr. Earl, what happens is any student whose parent, when they enter the school district, indicates that they speak a different language at home, we test them. We're required to test them. If their student is identified as needing ELL services, the parent has the option of sending the student there or keeping them in their own home school. We don't encourage parents, we give them the option.
Well, didn't you say that?
If a parent chooses to take that option, we provide transportation so their children can go and get instruction from ESL teachers at elementary level. If they choose not to take that option, they stay in their home school, and we have a teacher identified at every grade level in every elementary school that's Sheltered English Immersion certified to provide the services. You know, we don't force bus kids to that building. Nobody has to take advantage of the services.
I
Every
agree.
parent has the right to opt out. We don't encourage people. We provide them an opportunity if they choose to take it.
But what you said was, you tell them if your kid goes to West School, then there are more services.
Different services.
More resources.
Yeah, more resources. So that's what encourages parents to go. So there is a concentration. If you look at the percentage of ELL kids in Stoughton schools versus West School, so there is a disparity. What I'm asking here is, well, I mean, logic says, like, if you have, you know, more uniform population, you know, more kids are native speakers, then the English speakers will, foreign language speakers will learn faster.
But Dr. Earl,
what I'm doing is, I don't want to start an argument here, is I just put it in as a suggestion for goal to come up with a study. The study, I'm not saying we should make a change, I'm not saying we should take a vote on it. All I'm saying is that may be a worthwhile goal because this thing keeps coming back, and you could do a study, you can say, oh, you know, the way it is really great.
Dr. Earl, can
I think Joe wanted to speak.
If I could just, one comment on
I
that
asked
as a
before.
goal for the superintendent with respect to her evaluation, is that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a suitable goal for the superintendent's evaluation, because in her evaluation she has a professional practice goal. That wouldn't qualify as a professional practice goal. She has a student learning goal. all right, which that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a student learning goal. It's a structural goal. And if you look at the other three components of her goals, they're supposed to be either directly or indirectly drawn from a district improvement plan. So as that's not part of one of our plans, it wouldn't qualify as a goal for the superintendent's evaluation.
Agreed.
Well, that could be added to the district improvement.
It's a different category.
There are so many different standards and different subsets. It could be worked out. So I just put it on the table for her to consider. So I mean, we can debate it, but that wasn't my intention here. Dr. you wanted to speak?
I think I was before him.
Oh, he raised his hand before you.
You told me something about the West School and the 15%. Where did you get that data from? You got it from the internet?
Schooldigger.com.
Schooldigger.com. Okay, how valuable is schooldigger.com? Because we seem to be having a problem here with where the facts are coming from.
Right.
I mean, he's from the opposite side of the spectrum.
No, I don't think there is much difference. Schooldigger.com says bottom 15%. DESE website says bottom 22 or bottom 23%.
Oh, so it's
either way, you know, we have much room for improvement.
Right.
That's the idea.
And that's basically what we should be working on and talking about.
Right.
If we're going to improve our school system.
If that particular, so our school system and that particular school.
Right.
Right.
I'm not sure. Are we still saying different things?
Really need to move on.
Dr. Brown, did you want to?
I want you all to finish that first, because I don't want to interrupt that
Our
conversation.
goal always is to improve our school district. The West School has improved, has had tremendous improvement over the last few years. The West School was a level 3 school, it's now a level 2 school. All the data is tracking in the right place. We've done program assessments at all the different components of Title I that we put in place in that building. Every one of them is showing yields. We put in place a preschool where we haven't seen the yield from that, but we will over time. You know, we've done all the things we're supposed to do. We've assessed all the things we're supposed to do. And we can demonstrate and prove that the things that we're doing are effective. So in terms of the West School as a building and as an educational entity, it is definitely moving in the right direction. And it's not just my subjective opinion, but it's based on
data,
which we have.
Okay, Dr. Brown.
And I kind of want to support him. And Mr. Soros, if I can help you out, you know, because I'm not at the school district. The ratings go from 4, 3, 2, and 1. 4 being the more challenged, not worse, more challenged. So we went from a 4, from a 3 to a 2. So that means we've shown improvement. I just have a problem when I keep hearing it sounds like that the ELL kids are not learning. They're learning. It wouldn't have went from a 3 to a 2 if they weren't learning. I'm having a problem when people try to consider the West School as a special needs school or something. That school is a regular school. People choose to bring their kids to that school to get the additional support from the ELL program. They're not forcing or shifting those kids to that school. The parents are making an educated choice to send their kids there. If they want more resources, they do. If not, he said 3 times they can go to their home school. So I don't like the fact that we're trying to label the school and then have the parents in the UN community think something's wrong with the school when it's not.
Well,
that's what I have to say.
I have a problem with it being 15% and 22%, and I'll just let this go because I think we probably. But I'm going to talk to Dr. Earle about it. I'm going to talk to Mr. Ford about it.
There you go.
Because I think there's obviously a disagreement on both ends of the spectrum, and so I want to get down to the bottom of it.
There you go.
Okay, good. Madam Vice Chair, do we have any correspondence? No. Any correspondence? Any other matters?
I do not.
Anybody have other matters? Okay. So we will be getting into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation on STA versus Town of Stoughton. So I would like to take a roll call.
Can I ask you a question before you make the roll call?
Yes.
So you're saying when we go into executive session, we're talking about strategies to continue litigation, and where are we at? to continue it or for another meeting?
Well, I'm sorry?
I'm just
Wants to know
trying.
what strategies you mean.
She doesn't know what.
That's just the way it is stated in the open meeting law.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that lawsuit. So it has to be
So from the
strategy.
STA?
Yeah, the class action suit.
Do we actually have one?
Yeah.
There has been one filed.
So did we mention about the STA going to my school, bringing papers there?
No.
Oh, I didn't think we.
But if you want to discuss that in the open session, you know, you can bring it in the...
I would like to discuss it now, as far as other matters.
Okay, do it in the other matters.
Okay, so under other matters, but was it 3 weeks ago? I think it was about 3 weeks ago. I was at my school in Boston Public Schools. I had 3 representatives from the Stoughton Teachers Association come to my school and hand out flyers to my teachers, saying that I didn't vote for the contract for the Stoughton Teachers Association, and they're urging my teachers to have me vote for their contract, which was totally out of line. They didn't go to Ms. Husseini's job, and they didn't go to the town manager's job. So I just want to make that to the open public, that I thought that was horrible. And as I told in the meeting, I don't think it was right. And I don't think, and maybe that's the same thing as I said in the meeting, that Jackie Robinson went through when he was the first on something. So I'm just putting it out there that I didn't like it.
I missed the Jackie
You missed
Robinson?
the Jackie Robinson part. So when Jackie Robinson was out there being the first black in baseball, there was some hurdles that he had to go through. So I guess this is one of the hurdles I'm going to, and I don't particularly care for it. So I just want
a racial thing?
I just said Jackie Robinson. You can assume how you want to take it. So I'm just leaving that out into the public. I didn't like that. So, thank you.
So, do we need to make a motion to go into executive session?
I believe so.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
I second.
Ms. Husseini,
Yes.
Mr. Bowers.
Yes.
Ms. Enochian.
Yes.
And Dr. Brown. And the Chair will not be coming to open session. Financial warrants are they available at the school committee room? Our next regular meeting is June 24, and our next special meeting is June 18. Oh, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
If needed.
Oh, we'll open the meeting, right?
Many times if there's nothing coming up, although you may want to discuss.
Although this one's going to come up.
This is
Send an
going
email
on.
ahead of time saying
All right.
no meeting.
This is going to be like that.
So the meeting adjourned.